Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another stellar episode of Shot of Nostalgia right here at the Turnbuckle Tavern. We're in drive for episode 21. We're almost at the deep end, man. We got this. That's it. We got this and one more episode of 1998 to go through, man. The feeling is overwhelming. I'm overcome with all these badass emotions because God, did we get some great content this week? Yeah, man. We're going over 2 Raws and in between, right smash in the middle, rock bottom in your house, man. I'm good old Mike Belcaster as always, and of course, the host of the most.
Live from the OSL Studios, I'm the ACEFIELD Tavern, ACEFIELD Retro, and Mike Belcaster. It is so good to have you back here for the second to last episode, and we're going to be cruising through, as you mentioned, 2 Raws, rock bottom in your house. Some interesting stuff. The dynamic of rock bottom was not what I expected, not what I remembered, so I'm curious to get your take on it, and a lot of stuff going on outside the ring with Stone Cold and Taker leading up to that match, and man, here we are, end of 1998. Who would have thought? We started this journey in the beginning of February of 2023, and here we are in June. Time has flown. Looking forward to season 4, but not looking past these last 2 episodes. It's going to be a great ride.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just amazing shows. I'm so happy to be back in the No Cell studio confines. You know, I'm in the boiler room like Mick Foley is. I'm hanging out down here. So yeah, man, couldn't be happier to be back and rolling. And we got a hell of a show ahead of us.
Yeah, so we have those 3 episodes to look forward to. And just so you know, a little housekeeping here for our next week's episode. It's going to be kind of abbreviated. I'm sure Mike and I will figure out a way to go 2 hours with it. But just looking at it is 1 newsletter. It's going to be 2 Raws, no pay-per-views. I wanted to consolidate them into 1 episode for this one. I just didn't see how it was possible. I didn't want it to be this, rushing through type of thing. And, we're going to be there for episode 22, which will be our final episode of the season, I should say. And it's going to be, like I said, 2 Raws. We're going to say goodbye to 1998. And don't fret, we'll be back the following week with episode 1 of season 4, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Colton's going to be along for the ride. It's going to be a 3-way dance going into that. There might be some weeks it's 2 of us. There might be the combination of Colton and Mike, might be me and Colton. It might just be, who knows, might just be me solo dolo. But we have some parameters in place. So this way you don't have to hear me drone on for 2 hours. And I hope you guys are okay. And I appreciate the support for when I was doing it, but there's nothing like the dynamic of the 2 of us bouncing back and forth. And Colton's going to add such an awesome dynamic to it.
100%, man. Excited to get Colton on with us. And what a great subject matter. I mean, Smoky Mountain is going to be huge. We got to see the fun little layovers and stuff like that. I'm excited for the people to see it. I'm excited for Smoky Mountain, man. I'm excited for season 4. I mean, we're rocking and rolling over here.
Yeah, it's crazy. But let's get into the newsletter and see what Uncle David said in December of 1998.
Happy Hour.
All right, Dusty Rhodes, tip your bartender. Here we are, December 14th newsletter. A lot to break down. And we don't have that many newsletters left here. So like I said, next week, we're going to have 1 newsletter to go through. We're going to have 2 during this episode. And we're going to start with the latest round of mainstream media stories with professional wrestling. And that's been something that's changed. We've watched it happen and evolve over 1998. We have 2 stories happening. One being Steve Austin. He has an article in Rolling Stone dedicated to him. And Bill Goldberg is featured in the People and News of 2 different networks doing movies and an autobiography book planned on the life of Jesse Ventura. So wrestling's all over the place. We talked about wrestling being sort of this niche thing where you kind of whispered that you watched it. We watched over the course of time in 1998. Maybe Mike Tyson helped, Jay Leno helped, Dennis Rodman helped it. The celebrity wings have helped it. But now here we are where Stone Cold Steve Austin in 1998, Bill Goldberg in 1998 are some of the biggest celebrities in all of media and entertainment.
Yeah, no, it's wild. And seeing where we came from in this, the beginning of this journey here, to see Stone Cold on the, featured in Rolling Stones, it's insane, man. I remember Rolling Stones. I remember going to pick up Rolling Stones all the time when I was younger. It was always like a staple, bathroom mag in the Belcaster household. But so crazy, man. So to see the stardom just fly through the ceiling, man. It's just reaching new levels of craziness. Stone Cold is well deserved. I mean, he paved the way for it, man. It is insane to see.
Yeah, we watched over the course of 1998 and even 1996, seeing the progression of where wrestling was living. And this Austin story, which is going to be on the newsstands from Christmas Eve of 1998 until 1999, the January 7th episodes. They used to have a week long or 2 weeks where it'd be relevant. By the time it reaches the newsstand, some things were irrelevant. But the issue of the Rolling Stone was a must read, according to Dave Meltzer, perhaps the best story of all in this recent mainstream media blitz. And he says it was far more in depth than most of the recent wrestling is really popular, and the WWF is really sleazy stories. We've seen that happen where New York Post would cover them, New York Times. We've seen the Washington Post cover them. Even some, San Diego Gazette covered them, where it was just like, just so you guys know, wrestling's fake. Did you guys hear that? They're doing underhanded things, and they're sleazy, and girls taking their tops off, and a lot of blood and chair shots. And that was every media story, but that wasn't the case here. A lot of this was a guy named Chris Heath. He was writing in the Rolling Stone article. He did a very fair portrayal of Austin and the wrestling industry. Meltzer says Austin comes off as a real person who got a spot through a weird combination of fate and being in the right place at the right time with the right gimmick in an industry so filled with lies. And after being around it for a few weeks, you start thinking everything is a lie. So it goes back and forth, talks about his whole career, talks about teaming with Brian Pillman as the Hollywood Blondes, and goes through his time in WCW, his time in ECW, and also talking about his interests outside of wrestling, kind of putting Steve Austin, not the character with the spotlight on, but Steve Williams, the person who's playing the character. And that was a different dynamic because, with the curtain call and everything that happened a few years prior to this, wrestling was always portrayed as protecting who you are. But Steve Austin, something was so real about him on screen, but also as a person in this article and elsewhere.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's really crazy to see the dynamic of how, like we were talking about earlier, how things have grown since the beginning of 98. I mean, we were getting like smut pieces about WWF, pro wrestling in general, going on to this almost biographical article about Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like you said, how his interests outside of the business, talking about drinking and listening to heavy metal and fishing and hunting and all that shit, man. It's so badass to read about. And I remember becoming more of a fan of Austin, knowing he was in the heavy metal, knowing he was like, a really average badass dude that would just, enjoy his time off, jam out some, Kill Switch Engage and and have a couple Coors, man. That's the best way to do it.
So the article also dove deep into just making people blur in the line. And we had that conversation even in 2022, 2023 with the, CM Punk brawl out stuff, similar to this, where they feel, and some people outside, even the author was asking Steve Austin about WWF and WCW possibly in cahoots and working an angle and blurring that line and making people feel like the Bret Hart stuff was real and what's actually real. And Austin actually breaking his neck at SummerSlam 97. It was that a work because they also portrayed that Owen Hart breaking Dan Severn's neck in 1998. And that was used as storyline, and Hawk falling off the top of the Titantron. So this author, who's not a wrestling fan, is trying to break it all down. And it just kind of shows you that we're so in the weeds with all of this and following along, and you can put things in certain boxes and saying this was a work, this was a shoot, this was a blend of both. But for someone just experiencing the product in 1998, especially where there was such a veiled secrecy over the business, where it was for the longest time, those secrets were protected. It was like the mysteries behind the magic or all that stuff where you weren't able to know how they were able to blade themselves, or it was protected in the industry. And that has changed. And 1998 was the entry level into what we know it today. It's IWC based. Fans like to know what's going on, how the sausage is made, if you will. Very, we're seeing that over time.
Yeah. And listen, it's even more impressive because there was no, you couldn't go on your computer easily and find out what's, who's going to be at Raw this weekend, or Monday night, or who's going to be on SmackDown, what's going on with anything. You just, you didn't have that access. So this was an article ahead of its time almost. It was pretty cool.
Absolutely. And here we are with the ratings war. And of course, that's always been the conversation in the Monday Night Wars. And we like to look at those numbers, go up and go down. Right now, it's been complete obliteration on the WWF side, making 6 weeks in a row with no end in sight. The last 2 weeks that we just kind of watched here at the end of 1998 it was a landslide. There was really no competition, and WCW is trying to move things around. And I was on Solo last week, but I was talking about how WCW is panicking at this point, where they're seeing that not building these future stars and getting behind guys that had some momentum at one given time, with Eddie Guerrero and even guys like Chris Jericho, who are looking to go to greener pastures. And they do. They're now kind of laying in the bed that they created where they have to rely on Hogan, and that's not resonating with fans anymore.
Yeah.
And they're hot-shotting who has the pen and figuring out the storylines, and there's nothing that's going to fix this. There's no easy fix overnight because the damage done with WCW was incremental, but once it was done, it was done. And that's what we're seeing right now, the results of misbooking and bad decisions over time and making fans feel like they're stupid. That's really what the result is here. And WWF has been obliterating them.
No, absolutely. And I mean, this even goes towards the later years of WCW. I mean, you got a lot of, they try so much damage control and bringing in younger talents, and it just never catches on. And it was too little too late, it's insane to see the downfall, how quick it came, because it's only a few months where it's just been nonstop, snowball effect for the ratings on their part. And WWF is just taking over like none other, man.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is we've seen the ratings shift in WWF side, but one of the craziest part about it is that Nitro on the attendance side was doing some of the best numbers they've done. And we saw them on December 7th. They had a Nitro emanating from the Astrodome in Houston. It was the second largest crowd in Gate and company history, but they were still drubbed in the ratings. So
yeah,
they are, in a lot of ways, they were doing things well. And I don't think the metrics could measure where things were going. And if you looked at the gates and the merchandise and things that were still selling, you would think business is still good. We're going to be around for a long time, but these ratings were a barometer of things were going to go downhill quickly. And I think some of the knee-jerk reactions we've seen on WCW side, where they gave Kevin Nash the book and they got rid of somebody, and then they got rid of production team, and then they started to make decisions based out of haste instead of just calculated decisions, because it felt like two different tales. We had WWF, they had the blinders on, they just did what they did, push young talent, told their stories. On WCW side, they were doing things to counteract what WWF's doing. And those two strategies, you see the results of them.
Yeah, no, 100%, man.
So we also had, and we're going to talk about this on at length here, but we also had a lot of controversy around the Steve Austin being crucified thing. One of the famous moments of this Taker stuff. And there's been some interesting things we've talked about, where, of course, last week I talked about the potential embalming of Stone Cold Steve Austin, where he was trying to stab him in a hospital and all that insane stuff that went on last week. Absolutely. I forgot that happened. So quickly, give me your take on the embalming stuff that Taker had tried to kill Steve Austin on screen.
Yeah. No, listen, as a kid, you don't think about the how insane it seems. Rewatching it as an adult, you're like, what the hell was I what was I doing as a kid? Like, what were my parents thinking when we were watching this? It's insane, but absolutely asinine. Like just straight up off the wall, batshit crazy ideas. Obviously a Russo booking, it's insane. But yeah, absolutely wild, man. I never thought in my lifetime I'd see wrestlers trying to embalm each other.
So there are obviously people very upset about this. And we talked about 1995, where Kurt Angle was, very disenchanted with ECW when they did that crucifixion angle with Raven. And he didn't, as a devout Christian, he wanted nothing to do with the promotion anymore. And WWF on their side, they did this, but they were staying away from the words cross and crucifixion. And we'll talk about this again with the Raw results, but Meltzer said the cross was shaped like a T, but also a U under the T, and it was being tied up to the Undertaker symbol as being explained. They kept using the word Undertaker symbol, not cross. But yeah, this caused a lot of controversy and people were upset about this. But in 1998, this is stuff they were looking for. They wanted people to get upset because it almost drove the ratings, like the Howard Stern approach, this shock jock level of stuff where even if it's bad publicity, it's what they wanted.
Yeah, I know. Listen, it's been working very, very well for WWF. So why pull the foot off the gas a little bit on it? Just I think they played it smart. It's still a very, very huge storyline and a very huge part of the storyline. Crazy to see in retrospect again, but yeah, I mean, I think they handled it very well, especially calling it the Undertaker symbol, not calling it a cross, not making it so insane. But it's still an image is, a big image is big images again.
So we also had Steve Williams, who's looking to make a comeback. He never quite gets back in the ring to the same level where they probably anticipated he'd be a top heel, but he's training with Kurt Angle and they're wrestling each other a lot the last camp. And it appears that they are targeting March or April to start Angle off with a big push, possibly as a heel, which we do know he comes in as a heel. And Meltzer does mention the crucifixion thing about the ECW and Angle being furious of it and him not coming back to ECW, but just shows you that money talks, where WWF has a little bit more stake. And I think Angle sees that he's about to get a huge push and be a huge star in a promotion that is thriving upon, millions of people watching at home. So Kurt Angle was able to look past it. Maybe it wasn't as on the nose as ECW did it as. Maybe that was okay in his eyes because it was the Taker symbol. It was more of a satanic. I don't know. He was able to look past it, but it definitely was something Meltzer targeted as saying, like, Kurt Angle decided not to go to the ECW because of this exact same reason, but look past it with WWF.
Yeah, and listen, Vince could sell a ketchup popsicle to a lady in white gloves. and no discredit towards Paul Heyman, but I'm sure Vince was more, come on, pal, it's okay. It's just this. We're gonna do it. Like, and I'm sure Kurt Angle and him had conversations about it. I'm sure everything was perfectly fine.
So we have Dan Broderick's in the Baltimore Sun. He ran a column of attending Raw, and he's not a wrestling fan, but one thing he did note, and I had to bring it to your attention because he noted that when the oddities came out, the WWF actually ignited a device that emitted a sewage-like stench only noticeable to ringside fans to make as if the oddities don't bathe. Your take on that? I've never heard that in my life, that they were kind of setting off a smoke bomb. Like the things you used to get from the ice cream truck would be like the smoke bomb that you would use. They were doing this for the oddities. I've never heard this in my life.
I mean, I've never heard of it either. This is the first. This is all new to me. But I mean, Disney does it for food and stuff like that to make the Disney World smell more magical. And this was like the opposite effect. So I guess I guess that's a really good idea. I don't know. It doesn't seem silly to me. And plus, you probably got a lot of fans on camera going like, "Oh God, like fucking, like get that smell out of here." So it works. I'll give credit when credit's due, man.
For the oddities gimmick, did you look? I never looked at them as supposed to be smelling bad. I guess they were supposed to be hippies that smell bad that didn't bathe. If you're saying the Wyatt family, like that was their gimmick. Luke Harper wearing that gross sweaty shirt. But like apparently, and people in shoot interviews have said it, like he's the best smelling wrestler of all time. Where you wrestle him and he smelled like lavender and whatever, like good cinnamon and all that. The shirt looked like it was dirty. He took pride out of looking disgusting on camera as far as the clothing goes, but smelling good to the person in the ring.
Well, we've seen how Mr. Brody Lee cleaned up in the long run, so I think he did pretty damn good. So. Oddities,
right now,
man,
throwing some papers out there.
I wasn't expecting the oddities to smell bad. Like it didn't seem like it's not like it's Fish Boy or something like that. It doesn't need a stench to it.
So we have the Las Vegas newspaper talking about the Debbie Reynolds Hotel that we talked all these weeks ago about. They're apparently very upset with the changes in clientele the WWF will bring. They also complained WWF wasn't letting them know anything about its plans, which WWF responded by saying it was because they really hadn't worked out the plans, which we do know it never happens. We never get the WWF hotel. It eventually fizzles out, I think, not too long after this. But what could have been, we talked about the resort level stuff where you mentioned Disney World just before about the instilling sense into the parks. But imagine we had this WWF hotel experience where maybe now they could do it. But even then it was, man, stay in the Stone Cold Steve Austin room and see a live show and go to where, I don't know, something cool about it that they were trying to expand. It just never came to fruition.
Yeah, I dig it. I think it's a great concept. And I mean, what a better way to utilize talents maybe not used on TV all the time too. Like you could be throwing a nightly, weekly show or whatever inside the hotel, make it fun. Kind of like every Vegas attraction, you got a 4:00 show, you got a 7:00 show, and you got the Val Venus hour at midnight. So who knows what they would have done with it? But I think it would have been a cool idea.
So we're going to the December 21st newsletter, and this is the newsletter that is reviewing the pay-per-view we're going to be talking about. But I felt like I had to at least talk about here in the newsletter section to set the stage for Rock Bottom, because there's a lot to be said about it. And I mentioned before the Steve Austin and Undertaker Buried Alive match. The two of these guys in the ring, we've seen them wrestle countless times, much better matches than they had here. Meltzer says it was one of those deals where anything that could go wrong did. Undertaker's already limited as he's been working for months without rest on a broken ankle. But the other stuff was a little bit more concerning on Austin's part. He was suffering from what is called an intestinal virus, had barely eaten the previous week. And Meltzer says to make things worse, early in the match, he took a bump on an uneven dirt mound and his shoulder, which tore his oblique or abdominal muscle on the right side. Meltzer continues, he worked the rest of the match with the feeling of being stabbed in the side every time he moved his torso. He went to the hospital after the match and actually missed the TV tapings, which says something since he made TV the day after being dropped in his head by Owen Hart. So he was not himself, particularly as the match progressed. The crowd, hurt by the previous finish, which we'll talk about, was totally dead. And there were spots that you actually thought they had turned the crowd audio, which was positively eerie when Austin was in the ring, according to Meltzer. Somehow the Bulldozer got stage fright, couldn't perform anyway. As time stood still and Austin was totally pissed off, Austin started shoveling dirt into the grave, mistimed it. Earl Hebner gets tired of waiting for a pop, called and raised Austin's hand, even though the finish wasn't there yet. Man, a disaster. We'll talk about it as far as matches go, and they were not happy with this. I have not heard Steve Austin's take in this match. I haven't found it. Maybe I know he has a podcast, so I'm sure that he's talked about it or was asked about it. This was not their best night. They go over 20 minutes, but my God, like everything that could have went wrong did in this match.
No, absolutely. And I can't wait to talk about it more, but it was not your ideal main event for any pay-per-view, especially with the ongoings of the match beforehand. But we'll deep dive in a few.
So Meltzer also touches upon the recent crucifixion angle, and he talks about the question being raised of how far is too far when it comes to pro wrestling angles at large. Not just WWF, but also WCW, ECW, and future promotions, maybe even international promotions. And he said there are simple answers to this question. If the product was aimed only at adults, too far is when it negatively affects business. Too far is when more people are turned off than turned on by the angles, and that shows when the ratings begin to drop. And he continues, clearly that hasn't happened yet, and WWF is still on the ascension, both in ratings and attendance. Too far is when the TV stations get so much heat they threaten to drop the product unless things cool down. Clearly that hasn't happened either, at least as it pertains to the USA, as Canada's TSN did edit the entire angle off its version of Raw. When it comes to taste, I respect everyone's sincere religious beliefs, and I recognize this angle offended people. Meltzer says, in my mind, the angle was more elaborately done, but in what was trying to portray, no different than almost a duplicate angle that aired on both the previous Mondays on Galavision Lucha Lunes show on Televisa, the highest rated show in Mexico. Neither stations of which edited it off the show or received any significant protest to it in a heavily religious Catholic country. He says, while there were no religious organizations upset by the WWF angle, there was no sizable backlash, although there were people who were clearly offended. He also just talks about treading in weird water. This is kind of how they got their popularity. And I go back to the conversation we had initially when we see WWF taking flight past the point where we thought they could even grow. If you look at the scene in Willy Wonka where they go past the glass ceiling and the elevator's flying all the way up. I mean, the sky is literally the limit for them. And this is sort of the formula they use. So how are we questioning what is too far? Because as Meltzer said, everything that they do to defend somebody, it takes them even further in popularity. So how can you blame them for doing it?
No, especially, and how can you think this is that bad after, I mean, Undertaker was trying to literally embalm Stone Cold a few weeks before. Like, it makes no sense. But listen, you have a formula, you stick with it. Obviously it's working, and you don't fix what's broke, right? So clearly they were onto something, man.
He also references the Steve Austin holding a gun to Vince McMahon's head with the peeing the pants angle, which we covered in the season, and how the fans were chanting and cheering for a man to literally blow the brains out of another, according to Meltzer, and glorify kidnapping or taking someone hostage. And you mentioned the embalming angle, but even the assault in the hospital by Austin. And you can even talk about this stuff where Paul Bearer is talking about banging Taker's mom in the funeral home, and even go further past this point, the other stuff that they do, the Katie Vick angle, which is in bad taste. Man, you can literally name, most of them take place in this era as far as offensive angles, but sometimes obviously you look at it in the context of 1998. This is what people wanted. This is what ratings were calling for. And even though it may not age well today, and they've edited stuff off of shows on Peacock, we can't even see the full product anymore because some things are edited off, and sometimes and justifiably so. It just, you have to look at this in a time capsule at this point. And
absolutely,
1998 is a different time, different world, really.
Yeah, no, we were all learning at the same time. So I feel like one of that, I mean, it takes a long time for WWE to jump the shark, literally. I think it goes up until like when Vince kills himself on, like, I think that's when it became too much, right? It was too much for reality. And I mean, that's 5-6 years down the line from where we're at right now. It's insane. But yeah, absolutely crazy. We just learn as we're going, and WWF, I mean, they learn, they gain their success by pushing the envelope, much like a lot of things did. South Park, you name it, in the 90s. So there was a craving for it from the world outside, and it obviously led to their rise and superstardom of entertainment, and becoming the king of the shit, as Nick Gage would like to say.
And what a interesting rehabilitation story, where they took an image in 1998 that, I mean, they went from kid friendly 1985. You want to mark that the beginning of WWF as we know it from WrestleMania 1, just the ride to 1998 and the rejuvenation as far as being family friendly all this time later. I know it's been close to 30 years at this point, but a lot has changed, and we have wrestling inherently is violent. And I think that's what people forget. As much as Vince and whoever else on WWE side want to paint wrestling and use wrestling as a dirty word, they want to make it entertainment. At the end of the day, inherently what wrestling is violence. It's combat. But in 1998, they took it to a new level. And, this is stuff that we see highlights from. Of course, they definitely cherry pick things from this era where they want to show Stone Cold in a positive light. They'll show the beer truck stuff. They'll show the stuff that would be able to be shown here. But I'm sure that there's a lot of shareholders and people that are sitting in a room that have no idea this ever existed. And it's amazing to me that over time that we're here, that WWE is accepted form of entertainment, and it took this to get them there. It's kind of, it's ironic if you think about it.
Absolutely. But it's same thing goes with music. Same thing goes with any form of entertainment. I mean, there was times when movies were being protested, and, people didn't want you to go see The Crow because it was too much and too violent. You eventually get to a point where the growth becomes more successful than what would hold it back. Right. So no matter what, they knew what they did. They made mountains out of molehills in a positive aspect, So listen, good for them. That's crazy return of investment, if you will.
If you watch just from this time, I think 2005 is when they became, maybe 06 is when they started to be G-rated and just for everybody. But that ride from 1998 till 2005, not that long of a time, less than 10 years. It's such a hugely different product that we're looking at. And like you said, I think it took this to get to where they are. And it's ironic because it took just the most tasteless type of angles to get them to a spot where they could be this entertainment source of that families do enjoy. It's at this point Disney on Ice, where you go to WWE. There's nothing more kid friendly than Cody Rhodes and what he does with the kid. Like, I don't know. The ride has been awesome. Just sitting here looking at 1998 through the lens of, we watched every single Raw, every single pay-per-view, reading every newsletter and understanding. And we watch WWE every week. At least I do, or you're at least following it until what's going on. Just the difference is insane. It really is. And in a lot of ways, this has been my favorite ride in Shot of Nostalgia, because I lived this in real time, and it's and even some of the same faces that are here. Like, there's still some people that are wrestling that are in the environment now that have adapted.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely insane. I mean, you could pick and choose anybody. I mean, we're still watching Jeff Jarrett and Dustin Rhodes go out there and do their thing. I mean, Stone Cold pops up from time to time. He wrestled at WrestleMania last year. Like, it was cool. Definitely the nostalgia still holds over, which makes it even crazier to think about, because we came from this crazy barbaric year of choppy PP and embalming and bedpans in the hospital, but now we're at the pageantry of Cody Rhodes entrances at WrestleMania. We got it's so much craziness to where we got a pay-per-view called Rock Bottom based for The Rock, but we're getting collisions based after they're there just to debut CM Punk again. We're getting imagine if Roman Reigns had his own pay-per-view on WWF, and people would love it. People would go absolutely, they would eat that shit up in a heartbeat. So wild to, coming from WCW, going back to ECW, coming here to 98 in WWF, it's wild to see how wrestling has always kind of been there, but this is where, this year 98 brought it to where it is now in the craziest way.
So we have an update on Steve Austin here, and Meltzer says he got a gastrointestinal attack while on a flight to England and was so sick that he had to cancel all his promotional appearances and couldn't eat for 4 days. Luckily, he had the week off before the pay-per-view to rest. Meltzer says he was still recovering from the virus at press time, although he was able to eat regular meals on December 14th. The injury suffered in the pay-per-view match was to be examined on 12/15, and there wasn't even any speculation as to whether he could wrestle in Chicago or MSG. And then he was mentioned, the People magazine, he was supposed to be doing some publicity tour with that, and he canceled it because of how hurt he was. And he's the cash cow. I think at this point, though, WWF's moving in a direction where we've seen shows that he's not billed on. You don't even have Taker or Foley or even Triple H. You're main eventing shows with the B-level talent, and even the B-level talent was selling. And that's where we're moving towards. The brand itself is starting to sell, which is what it is now. I mean, of course, you sell tickets when Roman Reigns is on there, but now at this point, the 3 letters is what sells the brand, and that's what it's becoming at this point.
Well, I mean, there was a time period where we wouldn't go if John Cena wasn't there, or we wouldn't go if Edge wasn't there, and there's always that. I'll boycott it if Hogan dries up and he's never going to be in the ring. But eventually, the machine became bigger than the components that ran the machine, and that's. That's a hell of a feat in its own. I can't believe how much has gone into WWE, AEW. I mean, even Impact. I mean, there's so much out there to consume, and it's still it might not be as strong mentally or in the viewer eye, but I think wrestling is stronger than it ever has been, and we wouldn't have been there, or we wouldn't have gotten there without what we're watching here, what we're living through. I mean, it's insane.
So finally here in the December 12th newsletter, he mentions Mick Foley was number 2 on the Time Magazine Internet balloting for Man of the Year when it was announced on Raw. At the time, he had 2,000 votes. By the next day, he had more than 34,000 votes and was in first place. Ric Flair was high in the same poll for Man of the Century, and WCW did not mention it, so it didn't go any further than that. And Meltzer says, I swear sometimes WWF books to get everyone they can over, and WCW has performers booking to make sure nobody but them and their friends get over. So he said, I mentioned to one prominent WCW performer about how Goldberg is flattening out, and the response was, what do you expect when you have bookers in charge whose primary goal is to take his spot? Whew. So 2 different types of mindsets here, and you see what paths they're on. And we see WWE, ironically, take on that mindset. I always point to the Zack Ryder stuff and even the LA Knight stuff today, where it's not in their plans. They don't want this person to get over. But in 1998, WWF would take anybody. You get over, even go further to 2000, where Too Cool was literally the hottest act in wrestling. People forget that. They had all of MSG at the Royal Rumble when they were dancing in the ring. People forget how fucking over Too Cool was, and it's because they allowed them to get over. I don't think they would be able to get over in the landscape today because the machine creates a star. They don't want the star creating themselves, and that's the mindset that WCW did. That's one thing that they had pulled out of WCW's dying corpse. They pulled it out and said, guess what? We're taking that on. I guess it's working though. You know what I mean? Like you can't fight the hustle at this point. It's working, but it's just ironic that they almost became everything that they were mocking on the other side.
No, absolutely. But I mean, we do see the overturns eventually, like with a Bryan Danielson, with, you name the talent. I mean, Finn Balor was there at one point. We were looking at.
It takes us kicking and screaming though to make it happen. Like they 100%. Won't just follow it. They have, it's going to take a riot to get LA Knight over to the point where he's the guy that takes it off Roman. They won't do it, even though it probably would make another future star. It has to be who they slotted to be that guy. And again, don't want to argue with that mindset that they've sold to Endeavor for how much goddamn money. So at this point,
I would love to see LA Knight get his DDP moment though.
Fantastic. You create this new star and pass the torch. And not that he's the youngest guy, but people want so badly for new stars. And in 1998, they were creating them bountiful of just, here's a guy, give him some TV time. You get over, we're putting you on, because it was all about ratings. And, WWE at this point, it's guaranteed money with these TV deals. So it's just going to be, it's not driven by pay-per-view buys. It's a different revenue stream. So I guess the way you get characters over is different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's wild, man.
So let's get into Get Your Fix. Let's talk about WWF Raw's War from December 7th, 1998 from New Haven, Connecticut. They don't really run this market. They were just here the other day. They don't usually run this market because of how dry the crowd is. But let's talk about Raw for December 7th from the New Haven Coliseum.
Get your fix.
Woo!
All right, here we are. Raw is War, December 7th, 1998. The first Raw of our run through in December. So our current champions are as followed. The Rock, he won it, of course, at Survivor Series. Deadly Games in that tournament, turning heel, the corporate champ. Our Intercontinental champion is Ken Shamrock. He shares a stable with The Rock. They're both in the corporation. The tag champs, New Age Outlaws, 8/30, 1998. The European champions, X-Pac. He won it back on 10/18/98. Our light heavyweight champions, Dwayne Gill, 11/23, 1998. The hardcore champion just won it last week in a ladder match against Mick Foley. It's the big boss man. And we have the women's champion, Sable. She's holding that championship belt hostage right now. There's not really a women's division. It's her and Jacqueline at this point.
Yeah.
But she won it back on 11/15. So I got to ask you a question because last week it happened. We had the heel turn of Shawn Michaels joining the corporation. He's not an active competitor, so didn't have the same maybe appeal for people. But what were your thoughts on this, not having him rejoin DX and be a face? Like, as a kid, were you as upset about it as I was? Because I couldn't believe they brought Shawn Michaels back as a heel in the capacity to make him in the corporation. He's a great heel, but a corporate heel, I don't know if that fits Shawn.
No, hey, listen, and it was completely out of Shawn's wheelhouse, right? He was the anti-hero at the time. He was the bad boy, and you weren't expecting him to go corporate at all. As a kid, I wasn't super upset about it because I was happy to see DX have somebody to combat with, and it was good. I think this elevated Triple H to the next level too, because he finally had, the guy that brought him to the dance as a kind of like a Vince McMahon character from the Go After, and I feel like that was good for DX. I mean, especially we'll see with the New Age Outlaws here tonight and all this crazy stuff going on, but I think it added an extra layer of storytelling to that whole thing. I mean, it was great having Shawn Michaels, who we never thought we'd see out in this capacity again, teaming up with Vince, teaming up with Slaughter and The Rock, and you're like mind blown. You're like, what the fuck is going on?
I mean, I guess it makes sense from where we last saw him too, because he was a heel too, and but I don't know, the DX thing, just whatever. We'll get into it, but our hosts here for the show, the announcers, Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler, are the ones holding it. And you forgot, Jim Ross suffered his second Bell's palsy attack at the Capital Carnage pay-per-view. He finished the show. His announcing got a little bit worse over time, but he powered through. Michael Cole is going to get the nod as being the number one play-by-play guy until Jim Ross is able to return just for the main event with Stone Cold and The Rock at WrestleMania 15. So yeah, we have Michael Cole getting this moment to shine, and Michael Cole is still here. For better or for worse, he's still a guy that is here.
Yeah, talk about longevity of a career, though. I mean, coming from the realms of being the pipsqueak that The Rock would throw a T-shirt on to being the number one commentator for the biggest wrestling promotion in the world. It's insane, man. And I'm glad Cole's still here. I like Cole, man. I think he's grown as a character over the years, and I think he's gotten unbelievably great, especially with Pat McAfee being there and stuff. Like, it really brings out the fun aspect of it. You see him enjoying his job. You see him loving it more and more as the years go on. Hell yeah, dude, go Cole.
Michael Belcaster is a Michael Cole guy. He's a coal miner, if you will. You guys remember
coal
that?
Miner, man. Yeah.
But the crazy part is too, we just got, and we'll see him on this episode, Kevin Kelly getting the nod in Collision. He got his start here, the longevity in 1998 until now, and he got his flowers a little bit during his New Japan run, but well-deserved for a platform on an American show. I was so pumped to hear Kevin Kelly, and I thought he did a great job with Nigel McGuinness.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, how crazy it is that Jim Ross, had to step away kind of during the show. I mean, he wasn't on his best game, but I was happy to see Nigel McGuinness and Kevin Kelly doing their thing. Like, killed in it. Like, and it's good to hear a different voice than Excalibur every week. The Speedy talk really kills it. But seeing Kevin Kelly here in his little infant stages, man, and watching how it grew, and it's amazing to see a garden grow, man.
So we open up the show with DX. They are without the New Age Outlaws. Of course, they hinted at the New Age Outlaws being offered a spot in the corporation. So we're going to see if they're going to join this episode. But Triple H, X-Pac, and China come down to the ring. Triple H grabs the mic and he says he wants to know where the Outlaws stand. And he said, if they made a business decision, that's okay. Just tell me to my face. Here come the New Age Outlaws. They're wearing suits. They got tiny bottles of water that they're sipping on with their pinkies out, joking around. Cole and Lawler are just, they think that they've joined the corporation. Road Dogg includes Vincent K. McMahon into his introduction. And now he's going to be called Road Dogg Esquire. The new corporate Outlaws. They show some fan reactions. And if this was 2023, this fan would have been this woman in the front that was absolutely disgusted by this. She would have been one of those famous fans that went viral. But unfortunately for her, it's 1998. So there's no for it. And he said, if you're not corporate, you can sure suck it or sniff it or lick it, whatever the boss wants. Road Dogg introduces the commissioner, Shawn Michaels, down to the ring. And Shawn Michaels gets on the mic and cuts a good promo. He claims he's the guy who started DX, and he thinks that Triple H owes him an apology, and he wants his restitution for gimmick infringement. Triple H says, I owe Shawn nothing. And Michaels goes in on Triple H, calling him a nobody before DX, and Triple H throws it right back at him. He says, I carried your dead ass around when HBK was walking around with the belt and had no business carrying it anymore. Very harsh words here.
Yeah.
And he said after WrestleMania, when Shawn lost to Austin, it was me who picked up the ball. Shawn gets mad, pounds his finger into Triple H's chest. Shawn then says that I made you and I can break you. And Triple H, again, great. This is the side we see of Triple H as a main eventer. He says the only thing broken around here is your ego. So suck it. The crowd pops. And Michaels gives DX something to suck on. He wants them to have a match. Triple H and X-Pac against Bossman and Shamrock for later tonight, where anything goes. And he says if the Outlaws get involved, so be it. So the Outlaws leave with Shawn, telling DX, Shawn doing his suck it. He's still adopting that as his taunt. And McMahon's Pat Patterson, Briscoe, Sergeant Slaughter, they're on the rampway, and they welcome the New Age Outlaws with open arms. Of course, this is a swerve here, but they really sell it pretty well here. You think the Outlaws have gone corporate.
No, great storytelling mechanisms. And I want to give it a huge applaud to HBK and Triple H there. I mean, this is primetime storytelling. And this what I mean, as mad as we could have been that Shawn Michaels was part of the corporation, this is the layer of storytelling I'm talking about. Like it seeps in, and you're getting roots planted from early storytelling, and this thing's blossoming into this badass feud that eventually, I mean, when Shawn Michaels returns and takes on Triple H in the street fight, this comes from that. So awesome shit. Very, very awesome shit.
So we go into our opening match of the night. Jeff Jarrett with Deborah in his corner, taking on D'Lo Brown and Mark Henry. Match is really quick. They were showing Jeff Jarrett accepting Goldust's challenge to a striptease match. So matches, again, 2 minutes and 24 seconds. Jarrett is concerned about Deborah flashing her taking her shirt off. He's looking at her, and of course they're playing that angle. D'Lo rolls him up for the 3 count.
Roll up.
Yeah, wild roll up here. I thought Jarrett and D'Lo always had some good chemistry. I thought they really linked up here. They didn't give them the time to even get anything started.
Yeah.
But we're going to see them later on 1999. We're not going to be here to cover it, but if you go and watch them further, they'll be feuding over the IC title, and they'll match up a little bit. They become prominent parts of the mid card. Not their best effort, but again, you can't blame them at this point. There isn't enough time to get anything started. And this is sort of the issue as far as work rate goes in 1998. You're never giving time to get anything started. How could you get anything done in 2 minutes? So, yeah, no, Mike Belcaster's mic is off right now. So he's going to try to fix it. But we're going to move to Steve Austin. He's in the locker room cutting a promo on Tony Garea. And they go with a Beatnik ad for WWF Cologne. And that was what we talked about last week with the cologne. And the thing is with that, they were talking about how this would be a great gift for any man in your life. And it's called 100% pure attitude in a bottle, $20 plus shipping and handling. So Belcaster, I hear you there. Did you own WWF Cologne?
Oh, I actually got my ass chewed out by my wife for me not buying a bottle of WWF Attitude Cologne back in the day. I was 11, The smelling, obviously, I was part of the oddities. I was not on the smelling nice side of things. So I mean, no, I wish I did though. I remember it being around. I think I might have like tried to banter for it, but my parents were like, "You're fucking 11. You don't need to smell like go roll in the dirt or something." Like,
I wonder if they sell it on eBay. I'm curious if someone has a bottle that's unopened. I mean, that's
I'm sure there is. There's got to be some crazy collector out there that has a whole fresh batch of the men's and the women's. So I'm interested to see what it smelled like.
So with that being said, both these guys are probably not wearing the WWF cologne. It's the Headbangers, Bosch and Thrasher, taking on the Brood, Edge and Gangrel with Christian in their corner. Another match that goes just above 2 minutes. It's a DQ finish. Cole mentions just that, putting over the fact that the Headbangers are heel here, which hasn't gotten any more normal to me. Headbangers had this one run as tag champs earlier on, way before this time, but them as a heel doesn't really work for me because the fans inherently want to cheer them, or I don't think they ever really want to boo them. So just, to me, it doesn't fit. But we get Luna getting involved at the end of the match. She pulls Mosh down off the apron. The ref sees it for the immediate DQ. And then we get Tiger Ali Singh and Babu appearing out of nowhere to step in front of Luna. And they reference that Luna beat the shit out of Babu on Heat. The oddities come marching down. They're spraying the stuff into the air. And Kurgan stomps on Singh. Luna goes after Babu, and Giant Silva and Golga are taking care of the Headbangers. And looks like they're setting up a 6-man tag going forward. I don't know if we're eventually going to see it. But again, we have a DQ finish, a little over 2 minutes. You ask yourself, why?
Yeah, no, did it need to be there? Did it advance to anything important? Absolutely the fuck not.
So when we come back, we have Vince and Shane McMahon bringing The Rock with them to convince Paul Bearer to have Taker work together with The Rock in the main event. Paul Bearer says, "I'll let you know." We'll see what Taker says. Taker's a hard guy to get a hold of, and who knows if he's going to want to work with The Rock, especially after everything that they've been through. And we go into a match here. Owen Hart and Goldust. Lead us through this match, Belcaster. Tell me about this match. Went over 4 minutes. Two good workers, legendary workers in their own right. Different parameters here, different characters. Owen Hart doing his stuff it's the Blue Blazer, a Jay stuff that he's kind of hinting with that. And of course, Goldust is in a weird spot too with the stuff he's been doing with, as we've seen on his side. But as far as the match goes, give us the rundown.
Yeah, listen, it was again, it felt this Raw in general felt like very placeholderly. There's a lot of shit out there, not a lot of advancements going on here, but we get a pretty decent, I guess, back and forth, short match, 4 minutes 20 seconds, but we get a roll up at the end. Like, it's not doing too much. Deborah's out there with the trench coat and showing off her goods, and it's just it's a weird fit. And I don't know, man. It's a shame that Owen didn't get a better run here in 98, man, because I was expecting like, oh shit, we're getting Owen Hart, like we're gonna get some good stuff. I think we've seen maybe like 3 good matches out of him, and that's putting it very politely.
So this might be a good debate question in the future for the Turnbuckle debate.
Yeah.
But if you had to pick Owen or say Kurt Hennig and had to take them in their prime, put them in 2023, who do you think has a better chance of becoming world champion? It could be AEW, WWE, as far as with the emphasis on work rate, who do you think would have the better opportunity?
Man, as much as I love Owen Hart and respect his legacy and everything he's done for the business, Kurt Hennig was a way above his time. He was in his prime. He was fantastic and absolutely lived the moniker of being Mr. Perfect. He was amazing in the ring. I could watch him spit gum and slap it all day long and I'd be fucking stoked, man. But he was always great. Like, I always loved the Perfect Plex. I always loved, like, he had a great gimmick and an amazing look. I always thought I wish he got more out of his career as well. It's a shame. So I honestly think Mr. Perfect had more charisma than Owen, and I think picked out of the prime, I think Kurt Hennig would have been the guy, man.
I know Tony was a fan of Owen, clearly, for everything to do to honor his legacy.
To wear the Thanksgiving hat, of course. Yeah.
Exactly. You saw Tony in person doing that, I believe, right?
It's
you
wild,
saw it
right?
in real time, HD.
I was like, what the fuck is going on? But all right, let's do it.
I would say a guy like Owen Hart, too. I think Mr. Perfect has a good chance of being world champion 2023, but I think if Owen was in his prime, say he's even 35, even closer to 40, say he's 43 years old, similar to Bryan Danielson, I think Owen would be world champion in AEW. And I think what Owen was able to do, I think he was just in the wrong era. I think he
100%.
was tailor-made for 1994 wrestling, where he was able to be that cartoony type of character with the King of Hearts and all that. But I think if he would have been even around the Eddie and Benoit era in WWF,
yeah,
like we were just about to get there, where Jericho comes in 99 and we're about to get the Radicals. We're so close to that. And not that that is the be all end all. Of course, at the end of the day, a man lost his life to a tragic accident. So that is the worst part about it. But I think about in my brain, if he would have been around, if he would have stuck with wrestling, if he didn't want to leave, like people had said he was thinking about doing, I just think about the potential matchups that we've missed out on just a year after his unfortunate passing.
Yeah.
In the year 2000, if he was around there, and he might still be a part of the business today in some capacity. Think about the guys that are around this time that are working or working backstage as producing matches. He clearly had a mind for the business, even when he was working in shitty parameters and the storyline sucked and they were doing shit that just didn't make any sense to his character. And this is first and foremost an example of it. This stuff they're doing with Owen is not resonating. I look at him as a top of the card guy. He's just a top of the card guy. And he's not being presented like that in 1998. And if you've only watched Owen in this capacity, wearing the caution tape tights and being the nugget kind of guy, you'd be like, I don't really see it. But if you watch what he's able to do, New Japan Pro Wrestling, and going out there and doing the stuff he was able to do in the ring, a one-of-a-kind talent that never had the chance to really shine in this era because work rate was forgotten.
No, I think he was one of the most innovative wrestlers of his time, and a lot got forgotten because of this year. I think 98 painted a bad picture for Owen on
I
Owen.
agree. Yeah.
And I think it would have been a lot for him to recover from this, minus the tragedy that happens next year. But I mean, how do you come out of the caution tape blue blazer gimmick and get back to that level? I think a lot of damage control would have had to have been done, and a lot of he would have had to work his ass off. Like, and obviously we probably know he could have done it, but I think the fans at this point were already over it. And I mean, slapping him in these matches with Goldust and Jeff Jarrett and all this shit, like, it's just not, I don't know. It's not the Owen Hart I remembered, and it was very off-putting to kind of recap all this, knowing what eventually happens. It's tragic, man.
Yeah, I will always remember Owen for the 1994 and the feud with Brett. I think that's the best iteration of Owen, and he had the opportunity to be a main event guy. I mean, main eventing SummerSlam 1994 against Brett. I think he probably should have been champion, and people can make the argument if he was ready or not. I think he would have been a great heel champion. And it's just, like you said, it's a shame to watch him being booked in meaningless stuff, because it feels, we're talking about this match for a bit now, but it's 4 minutes of, like, who cares that it just happened? And I hate to say that, because both these guys are very talented. Dustin and Owen are both two of the best, two of my favorite of all time. But when they link up in this era, it just, there's no emphasis on it, because they paint that picture that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's exactly what it does. It makes it not care about it and not care about the people involved in it. Bad booking could kill any superstar, and this is clearly a very good example of that. It sucks, man.
So we lead into the next match here. We finally have Bradshaw and Farouk teaming up. We've seen them a few weeks in a row. They now officially have the name the Acolytes. Jackal is their manager, not for long, but he'll be there. Of course, Don Callis, tied into wrestling history, versus Val Venus and the Godfather. So last week I was talking about in the newsletter, we never got it on screen, but Val Venus and Godfather were going to be known as Supply and Demand, which is a unique name. They never really called the name. I don't think their tandem really lasts as long as they probably intended. But we see another example of Godfather offering two women to the Acolytes. Cole says he's never seen Bradshaw and Farouk look better in shape. The match never really gets going. It becomes an out of control ringside brawl. Tim White throws the match out 48 seconds in. The refs run out. The agents run out, trying to separate the two teams. And they really set the tone that they want the Bradshaw and Farouk being perceived as a very serious team. And they got the job done here. I felt like they look great. They felt great. This was not the same Justin Hawk Bradshaw we've seen. This is not the same Ron Simmons we just saw with the Nation. Different edge to them that are about to dominate the tag division in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and speaking of like gimmicks that could have went completely south, I think Ron Simmons, after that Nation whole thing, he could have been left in the dust, and easily forgotten about. But this repackaging, putting him and Bradshaw, I mean, both guys look like completely different people by now, and that's like it's the transformation from January to December is insane, man.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because when I think of Farouk, I think of this Farouk. And
Yeah.
some people might think of the Nation Farouk when he was the leader of the Nation. Some people might think of him as WCW, as Ron Simmons. But my Farouk is this version of him in the Acolytes with the eventually it's a couple of months from this when he's with the Ministry of Darkness with the chest paint on and all that stuff. This is the Farouk and Bradshaw that I remember. And you see both these guys, I mean, look at them, world champion guys, WWE champion on Bradshaw's level. Farouk held the WCW world champion, the first black champion in WCW, I think in WCW history.
Yeah.
Huge legacy that he's leaving behind, and different iterations of both these guys reinventing themselves. I think we give credit and flowers to Chris Jericho and other guys that are reinventing themselves, but Farouk and Bradshaw, there's been so many different eras of both these guys. It's fantastic.
No, it's insane. And it's like to think that Bradshaw turns into the JBL character so far, like down the line. It's insane, man. It still goes back and does the APA shit when it called for.
Right.
Like it worked out so good. Yeah, it's all the flowers to Farouk and Bradshaw, man, because they were always one of my favorite groups, my favorite teams, and like we're obviously we're not covering the APA shit, but it's some of my funniest favorite memories are, them sitting at the poker table in the back with the random ass door set up. Like, come on, bring it in the office, baby.
Awesome. So we enter the war zone, the 10 o'clock hour. We got Steve Austin entering the 10 o'clock hour, grabs a mic. He says, the stakes have never been higher. He said, Taker, you hit me with a shovel. You tried to bury me. You tried to embalm me. None of that worked. And he says, at rock bottom, I'm going to show you that I have no mercy. And we have the lights going dark and Undertaker's music hits. And there's a large Undertaker symbol, which we know is the T and the X combined. We hear Taker's voice over the PA system. Taker says over the loudspeaker, the journey down the highway to hell has enlightened him on a few matters. And he says, Austin, you're helpless against my ministry. And the other is that I am going to be able to take your rotting soul anytime I want. And he says, tonight, our journey stops in Austin's purgatory, where he'll remain until the rock bottom pay-per-view. And he says, on that night, Taker will sacrifice Austin to the Ministry of Darkness and let the entire world watch you get buried alive and burn in hell. So Undertaker's symbol gets struck by lightning, catches fire. Austin is staring from the ring, kind of selling it that it's a very serious thing. Taker's character takes a turn. This Ministry of Darkness thing is very satanic. This is the first time we're seeing Taker. He was always kind of veiled in very gothic and just being a dead guy as far as, Undertaker. And we've seen it turn to, I guess, the Attitude Era with they're taking it literally, where this guy is kind of scary. Like, I think this version of Taker is, people always kind of quote the 1994 Taker, 1995 Taker as being very scary. I don't know if there's many more. If you're a kid watching this Taker's scary as hell and bombing you. Like, this is the nightmare.
No, he's literally like this massive bad motherfucker that you like any bad heel going into anything. It's insane to see how the transformation was. But this, I used to have nightmares as a kid, thinking about this shit, and to see where it's at, it still holds up. He is a scary motherfucker, man.
So we go into the next match here. It's a quick one. Steve Blackman defeated Tiger Ali Singh with Babu in his corner, and Blackman delivered a jumping kick to the chest for the win. But the story is really after the match. Blue Blazer runs down to the ring, and Blackman attacks him. But of course, Blue Blazer trips upon getting into the ring, which is obviously what they're supposed to do. Owen Hart then runs down to get his hands on Blackman, and Owen applies a Dragon Sleeper, yelling in Blackman's face. And he said, are you happy you brought me out of retirement to now I don't think anyone reacted like we just talked about before. No one really cares, and that's sad too, because there's nothing worse than just indifference for wrestling fans. And I think most people were indifferent to Steve Blackman, Tiger Ali Singh, and unfortunately Owen is tied into this mix where people were just indifferent to what was happening in front of them.
Yeah, and how can you give a shit about Owen Hart when you're in a segment with Tiger Ali Singh? Like it's it's got no legs to walk on, man. Terrible.
So we move into the next match here. Draws with Road Warrior Animal in his corner, taking on Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown. So I'll let you lead the match a little bit through here. Of course, it's as expected. Mark Henry getting the win, and it's quite messy. I mean, at this point, Mark Henry is still green as goose shit at this point. I think he'd admit that. And maybe draws as well. Like two guys that probably shouldn't even be on Raw on the main roster. If there was an NXT, I think these guys would kind of be honing their craft there.
Honing is a good word. No, this was just a segment to get the China and Henry story a little bit more running, a little bit more breathing room, but another who gives a shit match. Like Draws is, they killed the Road Warriors earlier in the year. Draws is like stuck in this pigeonhole of being LOD 2000 and they're not. And I mean, Mark Henry's clearly the guy doing the job here, doing the work. Got legs to grow on. But insane, man. I love the foolery between China and Henry, commentators playing it up. Obviously we're getting to the sexual chocolate love. It's getting there, but yeah, another like who gives a shit match. And I think Mark Henry was more happy that China was out there than he was that he was on TV.
So we go into this next match here, and of course they're teasing this New Age Outlaw stuff before the match. They're in a huddle with Shawn Michaels, acting like the camera's creeping up on them. But we have Ken Shamrock and Big Bossman taking on DX, which is the iteration is Triple H and X-Pac. China's in their corner in an anything goes match. So of course, a lot of good action, much more action than we've seen in other matches. Pretty good. A lot of good stuff in this match. They have good chemistry. I love Bossman, Ken Shamrock. They do a good job of teaming together. Triple H and X-Pac, of course, have great chemistry. X-Pac, one of the best guys as far as in this era, as far as selling goes, emoting to the fans, and very over. I know he's only a few years from this point of having the X-Pac heat where people don't want him there, which I never understand. And I'll go off all day about X-Pac heat. I don't think it's a real thing. But X-Pac at this point, very over. Match is very good. We see a lot of stuff going on at the end of the match. It's a DQ finish. Of course, they put the situation where the Outlaws are going to have their chance to officially join the corporation. So Bossman's holding Triple H. Shawn Michaels tosses the chair to Shamrock. Billy Gunn hops in the ring and he says, no, let me do it. I want to do this. Grabs the chair. And to the fans' applause, he nails Shamrock with the chair. DQ finish. 8 minutes and 19 seconds. New Age Outlaws are ripping off their Armani suits and they show off their DX shirts. DX celebrates while Michaels and Bossman are just very upset. They couldn't believe that they were tricked by the New Age Outlaws. And Shamrock, again, man, this dude in 1998, if you're counting as far as headshots go, this dude has taken the most. I mean, he's on the leaderboard. This dude, he must tell people in the back, if you're going to hit me with a chair, I'm not selling it unless you just knock my brains out, because this dude gets clocked in the head. I mean, this is not as bad as the Rock chair shots to his head, but this is damn close. Stiff. Like Billy Gunn swung for the fences here.
Yeah, no, and it's insane. I think Shamrock, rather he took a really bad chair shot, and like earlier in his career, he's just like, lay it on me for the rest of like, I fucked up. I get it. Like, but, I mean, dude is insane. I was even watching we're watching the Buried Alive match, and like the chair shots Austin are taking are like nothing compared to this. Like, it's insane, man. Kudos to Shamrock and his really tough head, man. I appreciated it this year.
There's nothing. I mean, the highlight of earlier this year in the build up to WrestleMania 14, where Shamrock's on his knees and Rock hits him right square in the face with the chair. There's no faking that, dude. Like, no. And every time Shamrock takes it, it amazes me. But 1998 was a different time. But
we all know how stiff the Rock was with the chairs too, man.
He wrecked fully. 1998. We're only a month away from that with the I Quit match, man. God damn. But unfortunately, we won't cover it. But go out and watch that match. Do yourself a favor. Insane. But Steve Austin and the aforementioned Mankind are taking on The Rock and Taker with Paul Bearer in their corner in a tag team match. So we have separate entrances, of course. Rock and Taker get a jump on Mankind to start. They have Austin appearing. It turns into a huge brawl. So Rock and Austin squaring off. The fans love this. And Steve Austin, The Rock, you feel like the plan is always to get to a point where that's the next WrestleMania main event. And even when you're watching this, of course, we know what happens, that they're going to main event not only the next WrestleMania, but WrestleMania 17 as well. And then 19, they're going to have their finale match in a trio of one of the best trios of matches in any WrestleMania series.
Yeah.
This is a really good match, man. I mean, how could it not be? Taker, of course, is compromised, and there's a big piece of Taker where he's just piling through the injury and trying to figure a way to make it work. But he's been hurt since like May at this point. It's December. Insane. He's working on a broken foot. But man, this is the action in the ring is just out of control. Like the ref can't kick the control from the beginning, and it makes sense because of the heated rivalry. So like that's the thing that makes sense. The ref just loses control, and why would these guys abide by a tag team rule if they hate each other this much? With the impassioned stuff between Foley and Rock, and then Taker and Austin, and then combine the history with Steve Austin and The Rock, it makes sense that the ref can't get control. He does ring the bell, 8 minutes and 15 seconds. But after the match here is where the story gets a little bit more interesting. Taker is beating Austin to the crowd. They go back and forth. Taker nails Austin with a chair to the face, and he picks up his body that is now unconscious. He straps him to the Taker symbol. There's Taker druids. We got Gregorian chants over the PA system with the creepiness. Austin is on there. He wakes up a little bit confused, and he's yelling at Taker. Taker's voice comes over the PA, and he says, "Austin, I've taken you, mind, body, and soul. The only thing left is to bury you alive." We mentioned the controversy around this. I swear, like watching this, never in my mind did I ever, maybe just because I'm not like a religious person at all, I never associated this with a crucifix. I just always looked at it as Taker put him on a symbol. I don't know. Do you view it as something that was controversial?
I got what I got what they were going for. I mean, it wasn't going to church every Sunday, so it wasn't like necessarily affecting me mentally, and I'm not, oh God, turn it off, like this is too much. Like it was more so of like, man, holy shit, they're doing that. Like as much as, you know, any form of like, this is like watching The Crow. Like that's what it really feels like. You're getting this crazy gothic creature in the Undertaker, and he's pushing the envelope here. But I mean, Austin is the guy, and for him to take him and put him out there, especially with the Buried Alive match coming up, I mean, it's fitting. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's, again, as you said, you're one of the people that viewed it as it was just a symbol. They're just throwing the other, like me as a kid, I was like, holy shit, they're crucifying Austin on TV. Like no nails or anything, but like they're really going for it. So it was wild, but not. I think my mom was mad for like a week. Like, you can't watch that shit. Like, who gives a fuck? Like, it obviously worked out better for all of us.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like the Stephanie one is much worse, especially when they like invade in Stephanie's house, and like they're not done with this, guys. So they're gonna step up the ante and raise it to a new level where there's some gnarly stuff that they will continue to do. But I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just because you're numb to everything that went on our screens. Like just a couple weeks prior, we're getting Austin trying to be embalmed in a funeral home. So what is like, this is just another night on Raw, another Monday night, bro. Like it is what it is.
It's a notch in Vince's fucking crazy belt, man.
You want fluff? Go eat a marshmallow.
We're all out of marshmallows.
So let's get into, that was the go home show for WWF Rock Bottom in Your House. We now have the pay-per-view upon us from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, from the General Motors Place, December 13th, 1998. Our current champs are all the same here. Not going to go through them. Nobody has changed any hands. We're going to have some good matches here. This in your house pay-per-view is being aptly named Rock Bottom. Our champion is The Rock. And before we go to the arena, the WWF champion is making the public appearance at the Planet Hollywood in Vancouver. And he reminds us that the pay-per-view is named after me. And future in your house pay-per-views will be named in honor of The Rock, and will be named Rock Solid, Rock and Roll, and of course, laying the smackdown. That never actually happens. We do get video games after The Rock, right? And we get a TV show. We get actually SmackDown. So there you go. So The Rock was right this whole time. But we lead in Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler, and this is Michael Cole's debut on pay-per-view as a lead commentator. So if you're a Michael Cole fan, this is a pivotal moment in his career. And they show the burial site from the beginning. They said the tombstone is weighing over 3,000 pounds, which is hard to believe.
Yeah.
Like, why do you have to say, why lie? Why lie? Everybody knows that 3,000 pounds, guys. Come on.
Easily could have got away with 300 pounds. Like, damn, that's a big tombstone, but 3,000 pounds is ridiculous.
It's not even functional at that point.
Some cars aren't even 3,000 pounds. It's like, it's fucking stupid, man.
So our opening match here, again, if you want an example in 1998 that they didn't give a shit about work rate and setting the tone for the night, we have an opening match here. It's the Godfather and Val Venus. I'm going to call them Supply and Demand, even though we didn't get a chance to. Taking on D'Lo and Mark Henry and Jacqueline and Terry in their corner. So, of course, we get a big pop for Val Venus and the Godfather. The crowd is just happy to be there. These Canadian crowds are pumped, and I'm excited to see over the course of the next couple of weeks, we're going to get these Canadian crowds at AEW, and serendipitous that we have this to talk about here.
Yeah.
But your thoughts on this match, go through it a little bit for me, and do you think it was an okay opener as far as setting the tone for the pay-per-view?
I mean, seeing how the way the pay-per-view ended, I guess it falls on par, right?
Right.
But not the best match. It was cool, like you said, the crowd's into it. That's 90% of the battle with an opening match. But you got the hoes out there, you got Jacqueline, you got fucking Terry, and it's like, again, very off-place storytelling, kind of just lumped into an opening tag match. But it wasn't anything great. It wasn't anything absolutely terrible. It felt like another step into the Attitude Era. So yeah, but D'Lo Brown, Mark Henry get the win. 5 minutes 56 seconds, short for a pay-per-view match, especially like an opener, but not taken away from anything that we have already seen in the past. So it fell right on the ears it was supposed to fall.
So of course we get stuff going on. Val Venus is wearing a thong, and they do that whole spot where the Shawn Michaels spot that they loved to do back in the day, or they would just show Shawn Michaels bare ass a lot of times.
Crowd was eating it up.
So Mark Henry does hit Val with a clothesline, and then Gorilla splashes him for the win. And yeah, so here we are, just open the night with this match, and this just felt to me like an Attitude Era match that you can place on any card. That's what a cut and paste at this point.
They should have went with Supply and Demand.
Supply and Demand's a great name for them, and I mean it makes sense. Supply and Demand. I mean, between the Godfather and Val Venus, I mean the two of them work hand in hand.
It's a shame it never took off. Damn.
They wind up being teammates again in Right to Censor, though.
Yeah, so, how crazy is that?
Man. All right, so we go backstage. Doc Hendricks is talking about the WWF Superstar line, and he's talking with Triple H in China. Triple H makes sure he says, "I want to let Shawn Michaels know the Outlaws will get it done tonight against Bossman and Shamrock for the tag match later in the night." Then they show Mankind's attack on Rock earlier in the day. Again, putting emphasis on Heat. And Heat just debuted about 2 months ago at this point.
Yeah.
But Heat has become canon in WWF, where you need to watch Heat to understand dynamic of storytelling. And there's important things happening. Of course, we're not covering Heat, so I'm happy they're showing it for us to consume here.
Yeah.
But there's some big things we've seen, like this moment of Mankind attacking the Rock. That's a big deal. And also the Austin stuff we see, like big names on Heat. Doesn't last forever, but in this time, they're really driving to have people tuning in on Sunday nights.
Yeah, it was kind of like the first couple weeks of Rampage. You felt like you had to watch it. Now it's just like, which Heat fell to the same, wayside. Like nobody gives a shit about Heat towards the end of it, but it was riveting, must see, continuous storytelling on both shows, and that's how you make shit work, man.
So speaking of stuff people didn't really give a shit about, the oddities, Golgan, Kurgan with Giant Silva and Luna in their corner taking on the Headbangers. Match, as you mentioned before, the other one went about 5 minutes and change. This one goes about a minute longer, 6:52 to be exact.
Insane.
Headbangers wind up getting the win. Standard match here, as far as, again, similar to the first match in the night. Very paint by numbers type of stuff, as Chad likes to say. Mosh comes flying in with a body attack, gets the 3 count. Fans don't really react at all. One thing I did note is a fan in the front row put their hands on Mosh. Mosh gets pissed and I think swings at the fan. And the camera pulled away pretty quickly. But, if you're at a wrestling show, just kind of FYI, don't put your hands on the wrestlers. Like,
Yeah. If you didn't know.
Or yeah, please don't do that. Like that, it's a good way to get punched in the face.
Yeah, or try not to sit around people that put their hands on the wrestlers. And we've seen with CM Punk before, where he just turns around and decks who's ever behind. Shit happens though. Like you can't. You got to know what you're going with the territory. And like even now, AEW beforehand, they're like, "Yo, if you're in the first 3 rows, you might get fucked up. Please keep your hands to yourself and stay away from everything," which I think is a great thing to be cautious about for a wrestling show.
Folks, tell me where's the lie?
Where's the lie?
So we have Kevin Kelly, the new announcer on Collision. He's with Dr. Tom Pritchard. They're backstage at the WWF.com table.
Woo!
And the WWF Superstar line or WWF.com. They're just pretty much just saying they want you to interact with the product in real time. So they're ahead of their time here. It's not quite going to take off, and people will do things on the website. They'll comment on stuff, and they're a few years removed from it. But this is essentially what we do now with live texting. We have the Discord on the Turnbuckle Tavern. We also have Twitter, Instagram. People use their platforms because they want to tie wrestling fans together. And WWF, as usual, are ahead of the curve. They're trying to do that here. And WWF.com and WWF Superstar line, it's a different thing, but the same energy goes into it. They want fans interacting because wrestling's best enjoyed with friends talking to each other about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's why they made Nitro parties, damn it. It was all part of the fun.
So here we are with the next match here. It's Owen Hart versus Steve Blackman, and this is a prime example of everything we just talked about on the Raw last week. Talking about, again, this feud is not feeling important at all. Match is pretty long. The work rate is actually pretty good here. Steve Blackman and Owen Hart go at it, and they definitely put a lot of hard work into the effort here. A lot of suplexes and technical wrestling. A lot of the stuff with the fans reacting kind of circles around the US sucks stuff. Owen's getting cheers. When it's WWF, you can't pretty much turn a heel. I should say a Hart heel in Canada. So that's part of the aesthetic here. Owen thriving as far as getting a reaction, but Owen gets the hero's welcome during this match, and it's a shame it wasn't in a bigger spot. Yeah. But he does play the heel during this card because I guess he has to keep within consistent storyline. The announcers do a decent job of keeping people aware of just Canada's a weird place, and the same stuff that they always do. They try to make it that the fans are reacting not the way they want to, and I think the wrestling announcers do a better job now of just accepting where if they get an unexpected reaction, they're better suited to have the language to talk about it. But
yeah,
you could tell here that the announcers were kind of like, especially Michael Cole, who's kind of new at this first pay-per-view announcing as a lead announcer. They're trying to make sure that they are making it clear Owen's the heel, while this is going to be an outlier if you're a fan watching for the first time. Steve Blackman wants getting the win via countout though. So 10 minutes and 28 seconds. And here it is. So
yeah,
the feud didn't have any heat on it, as we talked about. There's not a lot here, but what they gave it to me was an okay match. It was interesting to see Owen get his flowers from the Canadian, and well-deserved, not unexpected, but it's weird to see him in a spot against Steve Blackman when he's returning home to British Columbia. It's not Calgary, but it's, close enough, I guess.
Listen, I mean, you're in the same, the same. Right. Yeah, you're close enough to home that you could be there. My only takeaway from this match was, goddamn, do I miss seeing the Dragon Sleeper? That was such a good finish. Nobody does it anymore. But yeah, man, Owen.
That is a great finish. It really is. I'm surprised
finish.
Bryan Danielson doesn't break it out like in his rotation of submissions, where it would be a nice one, especially when you do it to someone who can really sell like really well.
Dude, Yuta would be great doing a Dragon Sleeper.
I think so too.
Get the good vibe off it. But yeah, man, I think everything, the crowd was off because it's Owen, and they love him. So then the commentary is just trying to bury it as fast as possible. Like, oh, these wacky Canadians, and their maple syrup and fucking Tim Hortons. Like, but it's wild.
I distinctly remember that one of the most obvious notions of that was 2004. It was 2004 SummerSlam. I think it's that one where they're in Toronto and the fans are, interesting enough, they boo Edge out of the building in Toronto, which is crazy to go back and watch because he's the hometown boy. And I think that's really what started, and that's a whole different conversation. Started this run for Edge where they leaned into him being a heel.
Yeah.
Because he just needed to be. And later that year, I think for the beginning of 2005, he becomes that obsessed with the championship heel where he's like going after Shawn Michaels, but they have the same reaction. They're just like, these crazy Canadian fans, like they don't react the same way, and anything can happen in WWE. Like that's the whole aesthetic of it. Nowadays, I think John Cena changed that aesthetic where like these fans are going to react the way they want to. Like that's become where it was, but you could tell that there's an uncomfortability of Jerry Lawler and Michael Cole to like stick to canon that Owen Hart's supposed to be I don't know, supposed to be a heel here.
It's a hard spot to be in, obviously, right? For anybody, let alone Michael Cole on his first pay-per-view. He's probably sweating his ass off trying to cover it up. Like, please don't yell at me. Please don't yell at me. But I mean, they did a decent job. And I don't know, how do you not expect Owen Hart to get fucking cheered in Canada? Get bent. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
You want raw? I'll get downright nasty.
There's something in the poutine, damn it.
Spinal.
Just because, I mean, it's been.
You have to. Yeah, we got to use them as much as we can for the next 2 episodes. Fucking let's go full out.
I broke my back.
The best.
So good. But yeah. So moving on to the next match here, we have another 6-man tag match. It's the Brood, the full tandem, Christian Edge and Gangrel taking on the Job Squad. So you weren't here last week when I talked about the Job Squad, and we have Mick Foley is an uninitiated member. He's part of the Job Squad, but we have Al Snow, Bob Holly, and Scorpio. One of the best shirts. I don't know if they sold it on WWF Shop at the time. I think you can buy a Redbubble version of it. I'm sure Stash Pages has one, or someone makes the Job Squad shirt. Kind of an epic shirt. You don't see a lot of wrestling shirts that are white. Of course, every wrestling shirt happens to be black for the most part. But this Job Squad shirt, I dig it, man. I like the Job Squad shirt.
Very underrated piece of merch. Absolutely. Obviously, a great take on the NWO logo. Flipped colors. You know, it's not the black and white. It's white and black. Like, it's different. Like, it had a vibe, man. I loved it. I remember getting the Al Snow with the Job Squad shirt finally. I was all excited about it. Like, you get the action figure. Like, there's a lot of cool aesthetics to the Job Squad shirt, and it was funny, good play on words. I think it's a very underrated piece of merch, man.
So this match is a lot of fun. I really think all these workers worked really hard. They had a really good chemistry in this match, but the crowd was absolutely dead, not reacting to anything they're doing. Al Snow trying his best to get them to react to stuff, just dead. They are reacting to nothing, and that makes matches, as we mentioned before, latest example, the Puerto Rico crowd for Backlash, where the simplest stuff can just looked at as amazing because the crowd's reacting the way you want them to. The opposite is true here. The crowd just not react to anything. There's some really good spots in here, some fun action. Scorpio hits a moonsault leg drop for a 2 count.
Brutal looking too. Brutal. Absolutely. Like, it looked like he landed on his neck. Like, it was fucking great.
Edge making a save and jumps off Gangrel on all fours to plancha onto Holly and Snow at some point. Again, crowd's dead. Christian delivers the impaler for Scorpio, on Scorpio for the win. 9 minutes and 5 seconds. Match was a lot of fun. I mean, you saw a lot of good action, and the fans just didn't react. And I guess this is a pointing case on Russo's side or Vince McMahon's side, is these guys went out there and they worked really hard. The match was as far as matches go in 1998, I can't imagine you'd find a better work rate match as far as technically sound. These guys worked really goddamn hard, and no one gave a shit. There was arm trap headbutts from Al Snow, electric chair face buster from Edge. Nothing they did cared. And other note here is this is Scorpio's final WWF pay-per-view match, unfortunately, but dude's still wrestling today. He just wrestled my boy Desmond Cole. Just wrestled him at Beyond Wrestling.
And he looks fantastic.
And he looks great.
Still. Yeah, I can never give him enough flowers, man. He's just one of my favorites of all time, from Flash Funk until now. I mean, motherfucker is still killing it, and always a pleasure to watch. Remember that match with him and Grim Reaper and GCW, and like,
oh yeah,
it was so good, and it was just ridiculous. They're smoking weed at the top of the fucking thing. Like,
so
he's a party animal. You love it, man. You love to see him happy, still doing it, man.
So we move into the next match here. It is the striptease match between Goldust and Jeff Jarrett. So Deborah got the crowd to react. She comes out with Jeff Jarrett, and the fans are reacting to her. And the stipulation is if Goldust wins, Deborah has to show us her chest. If Jarrett wins, Goldust has to show us his chest. So because of the stipulation, the crowd is 100% behind Goldust. They are reacting to everything. And unless the crowd knows that the finish is coming, they don't react as strongly. So once they start throwing in some near falls, that's when they start reacting because they believe they're going to be able to get what they want. We get a DQ finish, unfortunately for everybody. Deborah's distracting him being Goldust, pronouns pal. Goldust then sells the distraction. He delivers a Shattered Dreams to Jarrett. Deborah grabs a guitar and hits Goldust behind the ref's back. In comes Jarrett. He hits Goldust with the stroke for the win. With right now, so the crowd is pissed right now. They have the finish here. The crowd is reacting very negatively to this. We get Shawn Michaels coming out. He sends Jarrett to the locker room. Well, back from the locker room. He asks Deborah to stay in the ring and reverses the decision because of Deborah's interference, which means Goldust gets the win via DQ. My question again, weird dynamic because it's Canada. Shawn Michaels should be a heel here anyway.
Yeah.
The fans are happy. Already figure anyway. It was all convoluted, but either way, we get Deborah doing her thing after going from being pissed about this to being a big smile on her face. She takes off her suit jacket. Jarrett can't believe what he's seeing as he watches on from the monitor. Shawn Michaels puts $100 bill in her bra. Her comes off to show her ass. I mean, they do the whole deal here. They cut to Jarrett, and then the blue blazer runs from behind if he's going to the ring. As Deborah drops the straps and Shawn helps her with the backstrap, Jarrett and the blue blazer run down to cover up Deborah. Just before she's about to take her top off, Deborah is immediately covered up by the blue blazer's huge cape to huge heat. And she wants to stay out with Shawn Michaels and show off what she's got. But Jeff Jarrett says, get back to the locker room right now. This is ridiculous, but there it is. So we get these here. It's the same stuff we've been dealing with right now. It's sex sells type of stuff. And I look at this as a barometer of where the women's division has gone to this point where they're taken as serious competitors where they had to overcome shit like this. And it's
100%. Yeah.
In a negative light.
It's wild. This whole spot, this whole whatever segment is, this was a wild segment. All the like Shawn Michaels coming out there and being, it's all good. Fucking get naked. And like the crowd's loving it. And you would think with the goddamn screw job, he would have been booed out of the building. And there's something in the poutine in Canada this year.
he's a heel in Montreal, not I guess British Columbia. So
yeah, right.
There's a distinction, I guess. But
crazy French Canadians, man.
We need a Canadian in the tavern. That's what we need.
We do. We definitely need a Canadian.
Yeah, I used to podcast in the beginning a couple years ago with at the wrestling couch. He was from Canada, and he used to have the best takes because he was Canadian. Everything was done with an air of his skew on things with how he feels, and he had the Canadian accent too, which was epic. So shout out to Jimmy the Prince. I haven't heard from you. Hope you're doing well, brother.
Throwing it up. I'm all for it, man. So
we move to the tag team title match here. The New Age Outlaws, Billy Gunn and the Road Dogg, take on the Corporation, which is Ken Shamrock and the Big Boss Man. Shawn Michaels is in their corner. So New Age Outlaws are really, really over. Their whole entrance gets sung along with. Man, this is a pretty good match here. As far as what goes on as far as title matches go, 17 minutes and 4 seconds. A lot of good stuff here. Shawn Michaels gets involved. He tosses a nightstick to Bossman at one point. He hits Billy Gunn and Road Dogg. Near fall here. The fans bought it as a finish. Shamrock rolls over on top of Gunn. He barely kicks out. The fans react strong to this. And then we get a little bit of like a messy finish here that it probably wasn't exactly what they wanted. Gunn flips out of a vertical suplex. He tries to hit a jackhammer. Shawn then trips him up from the floor, and he wants Shamrock to fall on top, but somehow Gunn falls on top of Shamrock for the 3 count. And it wasn't as smooth as it was. You could see what they were going for. Yeah. But you could see they had to adjust their bodies to do it the way they wanted to. But yeah, almost 20-minute match here. I thought it was fun. What were your thoughts on this as far as I guess just the feel of it.
Yeah, I mean, after the card, the beginning of the show so far, this was lobster on top of like what Sizzler or Old Country Buffet would be. This was going to the steakhouse. This was great shit, man. But I enjoyed it. I really dig the Shawn Michaels, being a heel here. Well, trying to be, at least in Canada. But I mean, New Age Outlaws are so over. It was good, man. I thought this was some of the best action we see on this whole show, which is insane to say, but I mean, it really was. This was a great back and forth, and I love to see the Outlaws striving, doing good, because again, one of my favorite tag teams. But this was a good, fun match, man. I really enjoyed it.
So we move to a rare occasion where the WWF World Championship is going to be defended, not in the main event. So they felt like this match wasn't going to be main eventing the show. We'll get into what is the main event with the Buried Alive match between Austin and Taker, but this is Mankind against The Rock. Rock has Shane and Vince in his corner. This is a weird match that we mentioned in the newsletter that it brought the fans down, and there were some weird finishes throughout this night, but this probably being the weirdest of all of them, and we'll get into it. Before the match, Foley brings out a match contract saying that if The Rock doesn't defend his title tonight, he'll have to relinquish the belt to me. And he says he will put a line through the clause that he says if Dad will get on his knees, meaning Vince, and confess to the world that he did not say he quit back at Survivor Series when The Rock had him in the sharpshooter. Vince sticks to his guns. He says Mankind has no choice. I'm going to rip up the contract. As Mankind walks towards Vince, pointing his finger, Rock nails him behind, and the match starts from there. Vince and Shane get out of the ring, and they sit next to Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler. Match is chaotic from the beginning. A lot of good stuff here. They feed into what Foley and Rock are able to do. Lots of ringside brawling, and it gets to the point where the ref wants to throw it out with a DQ, and the ref Vince says to the ref, do not throw any DQs his way at all for any reason. At this point, there's such a point in booking where you lose respect for the rules. And this is one of the matches that did this for us, because as a wrestling fan, you start to expect no ref to respect the count out, no DQ to be any sort of advised by with these referees. And if you follow the rules of wrestling, you get tons of heat. We talked about that with Bill Alfonso in ECW, where if you follow the rules, it becomes sort of you're the bad guy. And that's the case here. Take us through some of this match. I mean, the chemistry between Mankind and The Rock outside of the finish and the shenanigans outside. These guys have great chemistry. They're going to do it again next month in January, which is one of their more memorable matches for not such good reasons, but quality-wise, it's there.
No, absolutely. And I felt it was here too. Like even with the shenanigans, even with all the bullshit going through, I mean, we still see great back and forth between both men. Like that they're kind of leaning into the Mick Foley, getting screwed as much as possible here. Like, oh, no, he can't do anything that's going to get him DQ, whatever, fuck him over. Like, we're going to get him. And I mean, Vince, Shane, a commentary sitting there, giving looks at the timekeeper. There's so much good, rich little detail there. But yeah, man, weird finish. Not so much the finish, but the aftermath of the finish is what really screwed up everything. I thought Foley getting the win, huge deal. Then Vince coming in there and overturning it, I really think sucks that Rocky win out of the room.
Yeah.
And, absolutely. But I mean, obviously he gets a good pop for putting Mr. Sacco on Vince. I don't know what the fuck either one of them were doing, trying to lift Vince over the top rope and put him back in the ring. Like that looked like it was very awkward. And but yeah, I mean, Mankind trying to do everything and beat up everybody, and then Boss Man comes out, Shamrock comes out. They're corporations powered by numbers, man. Mick Foley's got nothing to combat with, so obviously they beat the shit out of him. And it was a weird turn of events. You still got the ripped up contract in the ring. Foley's just sitting there. He takes his mask off. It's just a sad walk of shame back to the locker room afterwards. And it was heartbreaking to watch, man. Because I mean, I'm so sympathetic to the Mick Foley character at this point. Yeah. I'm just like, and him calling Vince dad. It's little things like that really, you're like, fuck, dude, like, not Foley. And I felt like the arena did. I felt all the wind was sucked out of it after the tease of Foley getting that moment.
Yeah, and the finish too, if you guys go through it, we had him pulling out Sacco, the mandible claw to The Rock. The Rock passes out. So by all intents and purposes, he should be the champion. It makes a disgrace of the rules that he's not.
Yeah.
And they do this a few times, and they use it as a barometer of should this guy be champion. So we've seen it with John Moxley did it one time. I mean, Dean Ambrose, I should say, with Triple H. We saw it with Chris Jericho that one night in 1999 against Triple H, where they give him the win in the opening of Raw, and they say Earl Hebner fast count to Triple H, so they reverse the decision. That was similar to this, but at least those made sense. This really didn't make any sense because he says the only way the WWE title can change hands is via pinfall or submission, and The Rock didn't tap out or say I quit, which doesn't make any sense. If you pass out or knock somebody out, that's the end of the match.
Yeah.
The fans were livid. Like, I think there was a way to do this to keep the title on Rock by having him just get screwed out of the title, because the fact that you gave them what they wanted, they reacted the way that they did, and then you pulled it away, it dilutes a little bit what happened, and it takes a lot away from the crowd. And the crowd was already kind of hesitant to react to a lot of things anyway, as we mentioned throughout the night. So you mentioned the stuff that happens like that, but it builds up the Royal Rumble match for next month in a very good way. Not that it matters for us at this point, because we're moving on, not to 1999, but the Mankind Rock feud is at a different level. You can even say that maybe there's a chance that this should have main evented at WrestleMania. Of course, not 15. It always was going to be Rock Austin, but this had the steam to eventually do something big. And I think maybe their most well-known match is the Royal Rumble one that is about to happen next month. Where, I mean, crazy. They featured him Beyond the Mat, the chair shots. It is a cautionary tale of what wrestling used to be. Absolutely insane type of stuff. But this match is overbooked. It fits the aesthetic of Attitude Era, so you can't really say it doesn't. But they warp the rules to what you want it to be. And the fans, even though you're suspending belief, they still didn't buy the finish. And this could have been well suited as doing something different. I guess you can make the argument that it further helps the reaction you get when eventually we have Foley winning the championship from, from The Rock all these months in the future in 1999. But I don't know.
Yeah, they do it so late that it's almost, it takes away from the whole thing. And this was, how many times can you beat the abused puppy in the shelter? Like it kind of sucks, and then bad taste.
I'm not saying put the title on him here. I really don't. I just think the way they did it, just do the same finish, but have the ref knocked out. He doesn't see it, and have Boss Man pull him off, hit him with the nightstick, and put Rock on him. And then at least the fans they have a chance to accept it. But when you put the title on him and pretend he wins, play his music, announce him as a new champion, it takes the air, especially if it's not ending the show, because you had another match to go. And maybe they were just like, Austin will get people to react no matter what, not knowing everything that was going on as far as like Austin gets hurt. And we mentioned before, but we'll talk about that match. It's just, at this point, maybe they were just counting their eggs before they hatch kind of situation with Austin and Taker.
Yeah, they definitely were. They had to have been. And you don't expect a reaction like that, but this really did suck the life out of the whole arena for the rest of the show too. And just a weird finish, weird hot spot is what it felt like. And they just take it all back away from Foley, and crazy.
So we go to the main events, the Buried Alive match, Steve Austin against Taker with Paul Bearer in their corner. And as I mentioned before, we mentioned everything about it with the stuff Austin was fighting through with the gastrointestinal stuff that he's battling. And of course, Taker with a broken ankle, broken foot, just stuff that he's battling through.
Yeah.
Match is not good. And the fans are eerily quiet. And it's a Buried Alive match. So that stipulation limits what you can do anyway. There's a lot of stuff that should have gotten reactions that just didn't, but they're not moving around the same way. We get Kane getting involved. He climbs out of the grave, and Kane and Taker are brawling. Taker looks at Tombstone Kane and then puts him when he sees there's a backhoe coming out towards the dirt. Kane tombstones Taker, and then Austin's directing the guy driving the backhoe to bury Taker alive. This takes absolutely forever and a day.
Doesn't make any sense either, because Austin's not
doing
the work.
Right.
So he's got some random jobber in the backhoe, and it's not the Godfather back with the hose. It's just some random dude, man. And it was a weird finish.
And Austin's pissed. You can tell. It's almost if he was If he could, he would do exactly what Sonic the Hedgehog does when the controller's idling for a bit, just like stamping his foot with his arms crossed. He might as well have done that.
He was like, "Come the fuck on, let's go! Like we got to get this done." And the scoop doesn't even hold enough dirt to bury Taker in one shot, so like they had to do multiple scoops. So it was a weird finish, weird everything. But it's so you would expect much better out of both men and out of a buried alive match main event. The best pop I got was when the fire shot up out of the hole and Kane comes out. It was like it was terrible, you know.
Yeah, it wasn't good. I mean, there's a lot of good main events in 1998, and you can make the argument if it wasn't for the Jay Leno main event in WCW side, this might be the worst main event in all of the year, and that says a lot because WWF was knocking out of the park, and I think we just have to call it how we see it sometimes. And this match was just not good. And if this was on WCW side, this could have been one of the final nails in the coffin. But WWF was thriving that they could just kind of knock this one off their back and just say, all right, it's a night off. And I'm sure they look at it as not a fond memory. And the two of these guys, Austin and Taker, have the ability to work together, and they will have another opportunity and many more opportunities to work together and reinvigorate and get rid of this memory of this match. But I'm sure it kind of stings because the buried alive concept already limits you. And then you throw in Steve Austin battling medical concerns and then hurts his oblique. And then Taker, of course, he has a bum leg, which everything worked against you. And then the timing of the finish where you're relying on somebody else to make it work, the magic of TV and they've perfected it eventually. They figured out a way to make it work, but this is one of the initial buried alive match, not the first one, but they were still trying to figure out how the stipulation worked. And there's a lack of excitement for it to me. Like if I look at the buried alive match, I kind of like the Vince and Taker one I covered on the Extra Cooler show back in September of last year, because it's like, it hides Vince's flaws as an in-ring character. Steve Austin and Taker in a normal match could put on a good match without the crutch of the stipulation.
SummerSlam, you know, like
right.
You think about it, like it's so, and how crazy the reverse has happened here. We've fallen from since SummerSlam for these two, just not their fault, but just how aesthetically shit the whole match was. They're both injured. They're both getting fucked up during the match. Like it sucks, but it was just a blah main event, and I remembered it more fondly, and I was excited going into it, and I was like, oh man, this was a shit show.
Yeah, I mean, this pay-per-view was given a thumbs down overall Wrestling Observer newsletter, and rightfully so. And of course the Canadian crowd is a weird dynamic for it, and they take a different approach, and the crowd not reacting to the Brew Job Squad match and only reacting for stuff and not caring about stuff makes the card a little bit worse than it probably actually was.
Yeah.
Austin does get the Royal Rumble spot because he wins this match. That was also part of the stipulation. But it's a weird way, kind of like going out with a fizzle instead of a bang, because this pay-per-view was kind of bad if you look at it. I mean, as far as what we were expecting, as far as the other events, and there's always shit in the sandwich a little bit, but this is overall packaged. I don't know. I mean, Capital Carnage with the UK only event was much better.
It was bad, man.
Yeah.
If this was the exploding barbed wire death match of WWF 1998,
for sure. Like that's, I mean, really imagine the heat AEW would get if say the Jungle Boy and the Christian Cage buried alive match that they did, or whatever they called it. I call it dirt and stuff. That's that's my version of it. But I forget what they called it, but awkward match. And I feel bad because they don't need the stipulation. A lot of times these stipulations can be used to hide the flaws of guys, and these guys are hurt. So it could have helped.
Hurt, but working harder too. Like they
had to, because they were working against the tide. It's like going against the tide in a whirlpool. Like this stipulation worked against them, especially when you're working on uneven ground, and you wind up hurting your cash cow in a match by him taking a bump on a pile of dirt. What is the point of it?
Stupid.
You want fluff? Go eat a marshmallow.
I mean, we had to play this one.
You want the dirt? Guess who's got the shovel?
Absolutely.
How do we not play that one?
Canada had the shovel, damn.
Let's get into the Rose War the night after from Tacoma, Washington, the Tacoma Dome. Our current champs are all the same here. We're gonna get another title match here on Raw, but we have a lot of stuff that's on this show that we talk about stuff getting edited out. And as I'm looking at the results, what I do is I watch it and then I find the results and I add them to my notes so I can have the times and all that, because I'm not sitting there and timing the matches. I'm going on Cage Match and finding them. But we get a major edit on the streaming service that makes the main event of the episode seem random and out of place. So there is a Jason Sensation HBK segment that NBC wanted cut. And the episode of This Raw originally opens up with DX doing a parody of the Corporation. There is a video. You can find it in VHS quality on YouTube if you want to check it out. But yeah, once they're done, they cut right into it. So it feels like the show opens with Commissioner Slaughter coming out with Boss Man on The Rock. Michaels makes 2 matches for DX against the Corporation for tonight. And Triple H reminds The Rock how he became the WWE champion. Triple H was kicking The Rock's ass all over the place before I got hurt, which is a true fact. Triple H kind of making himself up there as a main eventer. Opening segment here doesn't make any sense, but we talk about Peacock cutting it out. I watched it. It doesn't, I understand in 2023 why they would get rid of Peacock, and I understand from NBC's approach to it, but it's nothing that hasn't been done. Like, I don't know why they targeted this segment out of all of them to take out of the show when other stuff was allowed to live on Raw.
Yeah, very, very weird idea. I remember the segment from watching it back in the day. I totally forgot that it was on this Raw. I didn't know they edited it out, but very, very crazy that this is what they attacked out of all the shit we went on through this year.
Right.
A lot of and I don't know, man. It's wild, but I get it. I totally understandable. Fuck Jason Sensation.
We were trying to find him. I think he's on Twitter, and we found where he is and stuff. And I think he's
psychopath. No, yeah.
So we go into our first match of the night. It's Val Venus and the Godfather. That's supply and demand, if you're asking. Defeating the Brood, Edge and Christian, with Gangrel in his corner. 2 minutes and 37 seconds. So Gangrel tries to interfere in the match. Val Venus knocks him off the apron and gives Christian the fisherman suplex for the win. So Val Venus and Godfather getting a little mini push here. And Gangrel declares there will be a bloodbath tonight, which we have not seen yet. But the bloodbaths become a little bit more of a staple of things of the Brood act. And one of the more memorable things in 98, 99, a lot of times the Brood are remembered for their awesome theme song, their entrance, and the bloodbath. So very memorable. Of course, Edge and Christian going to be world champions. Gangrel not so much, but thoughts on opening match, and I guess as far as potentially Val Venus and Godfather being contenders for the tag titles, which it seems like they're pushing them towards.
This was a breath of fresh air coming off of the pay-per-view. This was actually decent enough for me to be like, oh hell yeah, I like it. Short, sweet, not terrible. I like the Broods getting like their legs under their feet. They're doing their shit, and I love the teaming of the fucking supply and demand here, man. Fisherman suplex looked great. I missed that being a good move. A lot of people, another move that's like forgotten. I haven't seen a good fisherman suplex in years. But yeah, it's weird, right? And something so simple. It's a fucking awesome. It's the muscle buster now. They don't even fucking care. But yeah, the good stuff. I thought a good story advancement. Brood looked great. Fucking supply and demand looked great. I'm here for it. It was a good opener.
So we get Rumble build here, of course, where they're going to determine who gets what number in the Rumble. And they said there's a huge lottery ball tumbler that will determine Stone Cold's spot within the Rumble. And we lead into Blue Blazer versus Goldust. Oof. Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler are discussing Goldust's victory last night at Rock Bottom over Jeff Jarrett and Deborah's post-matchup stuff with, as we mentioned before, Michael Cole trying to sell it and of getting excited for Deborah and wanting to be like a babyface announcer came off as weird to me. That's what I wrote in my notes. It was definitely awkward for him to play that role.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, he tried. So this winds up being a DQ finish. So Goldust puts Blazer in the corner. Jeff Jarrett comes out for the DQ. He hits Goldust out of the ring, but then Steve Blackman makes the save. Goldust grabs Jarrett to beat on him outside. Blackman nails Blazer with the jumping kick. He pulls the mask off to reveal it's Owen Hart. As Blackman runs off with the mask, Owen's left with Jarrett's t-shirt hanging over his face. And we're going to get the reunion of this tag team, Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart. They're going to be tag champs pretty soon, going into WrestleMania of next year.
Wild. Absolutely wild. But the segment did nothing for me. Could have been better. Could have been worse. Not terrible. Whatever.
So we go to Mark Henry in the locker room, and he is referred to by Cole and Lawler as sexual chocolate. And then we're gonna get the debut of the music.
Yes.
So we're gonna get the debut of one of the more underrated themes. And he has 2 theme songs that are maybe 3 if you count the nation. Very underrated theme songs.
No, absolutely. But the sexual chocolate, man, it had all the jazz and smooth.
WWF the music volume 5 or 4.
I think it might be 4, possibly 5.
It's the green one, whatever that one is. I think it's 4.
That's 4. That's definitely 4. Yeah, but so good, so damn good. It's sexual, baby. Love it, man.
Oh, God, I love it. But Mark Henry and D'Lo are in action, as we mentioned. The music. Terry Runnels and Jackie are in their corner. They took on the Job Squad, Bob Holly and Scorpio. They had Al Snow, Dwayne Kill, and the Blue Meanie, who we saw last week on Shot Nostalgia, at least, on Raw. So Mark lets everybody know he's a lover, not a fighter. This whole match was to put them over here. So he cuts a promo before, and we see we're getting Mark Henry getting our push here. So we had Jacqueline hits Holly with a missile dropkick, which turns into a power slam by Henry. And the other note I had is it's Terry Runnels being in the corner of Mark Henry and D'Lo. Is she shoot mad that she's in their corner? Because she seems like she doesn't want to be there. Is that supposed to be what's going on storyline, or did I miss something?
That is a good question. Maybe
she looks
something
upset.
Maybe something Meltzer overlooked and we didn't hear about, because I'm surprised.
So we have a tag team championship match on the line here. It is a rematch from, I think, was it the pay-per-view or the Raw before? I think it's the Raw before.
Yeah, the Raw before.
We just covered this match 2 seconds ago, but it's Ken Shamrock and the Bossman with Shawn Michaels taking on the New Age Outlaws, Road Dogg and Billy Gunn for the tag titles. So take the lead and tell us about this match, and we get a goddamn title change.
Yeah, weird to take all that momentum off the Outlaws too, but great match, good back and forth. Outlaws obviously doing great. Bossman and Shamrock have got like a good vibe going together, digging it. Going back and forth with each other. Some questionable referee, looking the other way for DQs and shit. But it's a title match, and it's DX and it's a corporation. Who's gonna fucking argue with anybody? But some good, quick, we get that chair shot with HBK, and then you get the big boss slam. Awesome spot. I loved it. Road Dogg getting the kick out. But a lot of bullshit here with Shawn Michaels getting involved. But again, good layering for storytelling throughout the DX thing. Kind of enjoyed it. But the Outlaws just couldn't do it. Billy Gunn gets knocked out. The world titles are changing hands 7 minutes basically. And it's written in your notes. This should have been on the fucking pay-per-view, because this is probably one of the best things we've seen throughout this episode of Shot of Nostalgia. And that's pretty wild.
Yeah. So we have the corporation gets the championship belt, and that resonates because now they have the IC title, they have the tag titles, and they have the world title and the hardcore title. They have everything. So they are completely dominating. And so that's a huge step here. And an unlikely tag team is Shamrock and Bossman, especially in the beginning of the year. If you would have thought that Shamrock would be tagging with Bossman after everything he was being pushed as, at least he's holding gold, like he's a double champion at this point. So it's good stuff here for Ken Shamrock, but being in the corporation limits his ability to be world champion, which is a conversation for another time. And I think that ship has sailed at this point with Ken Shamrock.
Yeah, absolutely.
So moving into the War Zone, and we have Vince and Shane opening up, and they're going to decide which number Stone Cold gets. And of course, he gets number 1. And then Shane tries again because he's like, you know what? Let me try again because that's unlucky. He gets another number 1, and they're playing it off where he's going to get all the stuff here where they're going to screw him over, and they're going to draw one for Vince, and Vince is going to be in the Rumble. Ugh. And he draws number 30. And he says, with that, Vince plans that there's no chance in hell Steve Austin will ever be WWF champion again. And he says, if anyone who eliminates Austin in the Rumble will become $100,000 richer. And this is crazy too, because this is the debut for the pay-per-view of Vince's theme song that still happens today, where everyone comes out to the corporation, eventually becomes their theme song. But for the pay-per-view, it winds up being the pay-per-view theme song that Vince comes out to.
It's wild.
And this is the debut of No Chance in Hell. Like, No Chance in Hell is just a one-off quote here.
It's crazy. But, typical fuckery from Vince. This was actually one of the better of those kind of segments too, where they're kind of like teasing and like, oh, we got number one again. Like it was comical. It still held up. I enjoyed the shit out of it, but absolutely crazy. And going off of this too, I mean, the Royal Rumble is like Austin's fucking show. He came in lightning hot with the pager segments, originally going after everybody. Then he got to here and like, we obviously know what happens. Vince, yeah, fucking, they're all over the arena. Austin's like out of the Rumble. This is awesome, man, and it's just good storytelling mechanisms to keep Stone Cold involved with it, but nobody ran the Rumble better than Austin.
We're about a couple weeks away from Vince winning the goddamn Rumble, and that's how confident that WWF was in what they were doing. They were getting high on their own supply there, brother, because they were like, Vince, we don't give a shit. Vince is gonna win the Rumble, and of course they change what happens, and Stone Cold winds up going to WrestleMania, but they at least had you pretend that Vince was going to go main event WrestleMania and be there. And that just shows the confidence of like, we're going to do whatever and you guys are going to watch. So,
and it was one of Vince's better title runs because I mean, it's not the last time we see it. And the other ones are pretty goddamn horrific. So, yeah.
Well, this will lead to Valentine's Day Massacre, the debut of Paul White, and then eventually WrestleMania 15, where Austin does have his crowning moment and that great picture of Austin holding the title with his foot on Vince's chest, drinking beer. So it's all going to get there. Have faith in the storytelling, but I can't tell you how mad I was going into after the Rumble. Like I turned off the TV after spending the money on, well, I didn't spend the money on pay-per-view. I was 10 years old, but watching, like going to bed that night and having to understand like the next night on Raw, how are they going to explain this away? And they continued until February, where he was going to go to WrestleMania as the challenger for the championship. It's insane.
It is insane, but listen, it worked. It duped us, and it made the Austin moment much more bigger. So I give him kudos for that.
So we had a quick interruption from Mankind. He challenges Vince to a match because he's like, since you're a wrestler now, I want to challenge you to a match. And then we get a backstage segment after a commercial. We see Vince and the Stooges game planning to figure out how we're going to take on Mankind. And we're supposed to believe we're going to get a Mankind versus Vince McMahon match here on Raw.
Wild. Absolutely wild.
So we have a Vince Russo match written all over it. It is Jeff Jarrett with Deborah taking on Steve Blackman in a guitar on a pole match. And the best part is it's on a pole match, but it's 2 minutes and 31 seconds. Like the build up to the building to get to this. It's crazy to me that you could have a match 2 minutes. Like, are we that conditioned with watching AEW and New Japan and even WWE today? These matches they need time to breathe. Are we like, what can you do in 2 minutes?
No, it's crazy, but this is very right up Vince Russo's bullshit. Listen, pro, we're going to get a Gibson. We're going to put it on the pole, bro. We're going to make history here. Nobody gave a shit.
You want fluff? Go eat a marshmallow.
He was fully stocked up on marshmallows. Like he was ready for the fluff.
So again, the object of it is that something is on a pole. So we see this get spammed in WCW all the time. And I think the most infamous one is the buff Judy Bagwell on a pole match. But like, I'm not a big on a pole match. They did the pink slip on a pole match in 99. Anything on a pole, stupid. It's
such an awkward
concept.
Aesthetic too, to like climb up the turnbuckle and then have to climb the pole. Like I'm sure we've seen somebody like grease up a pole before, so it was harder for them to climb up. Like this is stupid shit.
So the ending kind of takes hold here again in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Not long to get to it. Deborah gets on the apron. She starts taking off her clothes, and now it's used in Jarrett's favor. Blackman grabs the guitar. The ref doesn't see it. Swings and misses. Out comes Owen. He hits him with the second guitar. He helps Jimmy Corderas back in the ring. Corderas sees Jarrett has the guitar, so the win is in Jarrett's favor. And Jarrett, at this point, gets the win. It's convoluted. It's stupid. It's every bit as stupid as you probably can imagine. It wasn't. It's a guitar on a pole match, 2 minutes and 31 seconds. It's bullshit. Jarrett defeated Steve Blackman. I'm at a loss for words, guys. It's not good.
No, I got nothing.
So we get a couple things here. Tiger Ali Singh is talking to Pat Patterson, Gerald Briscoe, and he says that someone has written bloodbath and red in the locker room. Patterson and Briscoe no sell it. And then And then Vince is telling Shane that he'll accept the match of Mankind, but he'll do it his way. They show some Seattle Seahawks players in the front row. And then over the McMahon locker room, Vince starts taking his shirt off, and Shane throws the cameraman out of the room and says, Vince has got to train. He has his match with Vince. And then we get Tiger Ali Singh coming out for a match. Lights go out. The Brood surround him. And, of course, we see the first ever bloodbath here on Tiger Ali Singh. So little trivia thing for anyone that plays trivia in bars. If you're like, who was the first victim of the bloodbath? Like, I listened to Shot of Nostalgia season 3. I know it's Tiger Ali Singh. So
we're here to help you guys not only, enrich yourselves in history, but win some money at the bar trivias, man. Go for it.
It's a good question that probably a lot of diehard wrestling fans still wouldn't get.
Yeah, they'd be like, it was supply and demand, right? No.
So instead of Mankind versus Vince, we get Kane versus Mankind in a no holds barred match. And now at this point, you know what it probably looks like. It's back and forth, and it's punishment for Mankind because he's going against the corporation. Anytime you go against the machine, you're gonna get challenged. And Vince McMahon walks out wearing a black sweatshirt and jeans, and he says, if Mankind wants a fight, you must meet me in the back parking lot. And Mankind hears the instructions. He bails on his match with Kane and goes after Vince. So when we come back from commercial, a group of orderlies is wheeling Kane into an ambulance on a gurney. They're doing this whole thing with the medical institution where they put the straitjacket on Kane. And during the commercial, Bossman, Shamrock, and some others subdue Kane. And he's in the middle of the ring. And the straitjacket was put on. And Kane's about to be committed to an insane asylum, that kind of stuff. And then we go to the parking lot. Mankind's attacking Vince all by himself. He bounces McMahon off a cycle and fencing when Pat Patterson and Briscoe try to help and get thrown into a steel door. Back and forth, and McMahon is shoved into the trunk of a Lincoln tow car. The Rock appears, attacks Mankind. He and Foley are brawling on the hood of the Lincoln, where Rock delivers a rock bottom right on the hood. And, man,
memorable.
Foley sells it like every bit as awesome as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But Foley, Vince is getting his licks in, dude. Like, it wasn't like he wasn't selling, there was a lot going on where Vince, I give him some credit, man. Cause he is a guy who's not a wrestler, and we'll see him take more bumps as time goes on. Of course, he seemed to get stunned at this point, and he'll be in the Rumble, not for long because he sits the commentary and all that, but yeah, respect for Vince as far as wrestling goes, man. The guy can take a beating.
Absolutely. I mean, we know that one video that went out during the pandemic where I forgot who was afraid to jump off of the structure, and Vince was just like, "Fuck it, this is how you do it." Vince is like 70 fucking years old, jumping off shit. He's spot monkey, man.
And that rock bottom on the hood of the car, Foley is just, he's God. Like, as far as wrestling goes. If you want something to get over, let Foley get involved. And you can make the argument that The Rock is where he was on the card because of his involvement with Foley, where Foley really put him over. And I don't think that's over. I don't think that's an overstatement.
No, absolutely. Same as he said with Stone Cold, with Dude Love. Like, you had Foley was a very pivotal point of a lot of these dudes' careers. I mean, Taker, you can, the list is fucking deep. He did great, but this was a brutal, fun segment, except for the Kane with the straitjacket thing, but which would make a really cool figure. Nobody talks about. I would,
I wonder if they probably can't do that because it's not PC, and I don't know. What's the deal with straitjackets today? Is that something that people?
That sounds like a Seinfeld joke. No, what's the deal with straitjackets today? Are they straight? Are they jackets? Are they warm? Who knows?
But yeah, they tried this with Kane a few weeks ago, but they succeeded this time, and I guess it was a good way to get Kane off the screen. But
yeah,
I guess there's other things you can do than do that. So anyway, we move to The Rock and Triple H for the WWF Championship on Raw, and they give them time to wrestle here. And Triple H is about a year at this point from becoming champion, a little less than a year. He'll win his first championship. I know the date because it was one of my first AOL screen names. Triple H 8/23/99 used to be on AIM, so that's when he won it. Fact check me, guys. It's not in front of me. August 23rd, 1999 is when.
That's crazy.
Where Triple H won his first championship. It was big Triple H mark at that point. But and still am. I think he's amazing. But
Absolutely. How can you not?
Look it up right now while I'm talking. But his first championship belt. The Rock taking on Triple H, and The Rock is trying to make Triple H pay for the parody from the beginning of the night. And again, we know that gets cut out, but at this point, there's no commercial breaks. They make it clear we're going to go to war straight up all night, and we're going to get a finish to this match. And they go back and forth. The chemistry between Rock and Triple H has been stated a million times on the show. They are great opponents. They go back and forth. Triple H looks like $1 million in this match, and he looks like he's on par with The Rock as far as championship caliber.
Yeah, August 23rd, 1999.
Yes, that was my
still got it.
Still got it.
Goddamn yeah.
So we get involvement of the corporation. Obviously, Triple H is trying to follow into the steps, and Shawn Michaels grabs him by the tights, and China sneaks in, low blows The Rock, and it's a nod to the finish at SummerSlam where Triple H gets the win from that. So it was a near fall. Triple H gets in the ring. He DDTs The Rock. Fans bought it as a finish with the low blow. They thought it was going to see a new champion. Earl Hebner's getting between Shawn Michaels and China, who are arguing at ringside. Triple H hits the pedigree to The Rock, and we again think it's over. Shawn gets away from China. He hits Triple H with the WWF title. Rock turns over on top of Triple H, and Triple H kicks out. And again, watching this, I still pop for the near fall here. China goes after HBK, and then we see this guy who we just saw on our screen few weeks ago. They stuck him on our screen here as far as debuts go, and it's the security guard from Motley Crue, and it's Test. He interrupts the match, and he gives Triple H a pump handle slam, and he joins the corporation. So the debut at Test here in 1998, Rock covers Triple H. Earl Hebner slowly counts the pinfall, and afterwards The Rock is looking at Test and Shawn Michaels, and we get Test coming onto the scene, and I forgot this happened, and this is how Test debuted. I thought he was just introduced by Vince as far as their bodyguard, but he joins the corporation, and he becomes the heavy for them in a group that already has a few heavies, and if he fits really well. And we could talk about Test and on his unfortunate passing and gone way too soon, but he had a great look. He was a good-looking guy. One of the best fucking elbow drops you'll ever see in your goddamn life.
Yeah, and the hair to fucking match. I mean, for the most part, I mean, eventually he cut it, but that he had some luxurious locks, man.
Wrestling is, as they say, one of those. It's a fun nostalgia ride, and that was fun to see Test debut. And I popped for this match, man. This was, I think, a good way to wrap up 1998. Of course, we have 2 more episodes of Raw next week. Is to have one of the highlights, which is Triple H and The Rock on a Raw. This was as much shit as we give these Raws as far as lack of work rate. This match had a little bit of everything, and I beg you guys to go out and check this match out. It's a hidden gem because it's not on a pay-per-view. It's just on a Raw that happens to be in December. It's not going to be living forever with the legacy of WrestleMania or SummerSlam. This is one of those matches that you should go out and seek out because it's fantastic.
Yeah, and it came after a pay-per-view. Like those are usually not the most memorable Raws, especially of 98. You're not going back after these pay-per-views and be like, man, you remember, like, so you can't break down matches and stuff like that. So this is a definitely good hidden gem and possibly the best shit I think we've seen all episode. This is a really good match, really good shit, good finish, good everything, man. I enjoyed the shit out of it.
So with that being said, let's get to the chaser and pick our favorite part of these 3 episodes, 2 Raws, and of course the pay-per-view.
The chaser.
All right, Mike Belcaster, we had 2 Raws and a pay-per-view to cover. Let me know what was your favorite part. I know it's probably recency bias, fresh in your brain, but how did you not pick the last thing we just saw?
Well, it's usually we have the complete opposite decision here of like, man, there's a lot of great shit to go through this week, not so much. But I mean, the main event of the second Raw obviously stands the test of time. Triple H versus The Rock. I'll give a small shout out to that rock bottom on top of the Lincoln for Mick Foley, because that was a beautiful spot and lives very, very deep in the canals of Belcaster's brains. But yeah, super, super awesome match. Good finish for a good main event for a Raw. It had you on the tip of your fucking toes, at the edge of your seats, waiting to see Triple H win that belt from The Rock, but it did not happen. And that's a goddamn good way to end a Raw.
I absolutely agree. I really don't have much to add for that. That was, I mean, it was the best. And it's not just because it's the last thing we talked about. It was by far one of the best main events we've seen on Raw, not only in 1998, but across a lot of different Raws. And, there's a handful of matches as far as you can, the amount of time Raw has been on TV since 1993. There's been main event after main event after main event, consecutive weeks. This one stands out to me. And it maybe didn't because this is the first time I watched it since it probably aired. But again, go back and check this out as far as the emergence of Triple H as a top guy. Because you have to remember at this point, he was ticketed as being a top guy. He was a guy that they probably thought would be world champion. But this was the opportunity of hanging with The Rock, who took the next step since their feud. And now they're at the same level. And that's important, too, to set your guys up. And this is the exact opposite of what was going on the WCW side. They were not setting the stage of letting guys take that next step. And you're getting that rub off the champion. And this is what a lot of wrestling promotions can use as a blueprint on how to get your guys over. Let them work together and get the rub off each other. And this is a perfect example of Triple H didn't win, but he wound up winning anyway because he's only he's a year removed from being A23, less than a year removed from being the WWF champion. And that says a lot because he was just an Intercontinental champion.
That time last year.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's insane to me and this is the way to do it. They're not resting on their laurels and just saying, we have The Rock, we have Austin, we have Taker. They're making more main eventers. They're a main event creation factory. And that's what they're doing. And then, not to mention Kurt Angle's coming to town, bro. Like that's also happening.
And everybody else is jumping over from WCW.
Chris Jericho, we got Benoit, Eddie. It's going to be a fun time.
Saturn, who was great for.
Dude, I love Perry Saturn.
Yeah, Perry Saturn.
We saw the Rings of Saturn get brought out on Ring of Honor the other night, and I popped for it. So
how could you not? Yeah, and what a great finish too.
So good.
It was back with the Dragon Sleeper, back with the the Fisherman Suplex. Guys, bring out some of these good moves, man. There's a whole repertoire out there. We don't need the high spots. We need a Dragon Sleeper, baby.
Words to live by. Let's close the tab here as the lights coming on the bar, and we're gonna start our Friday here at the Turnbuckle Tavern as we get you ready for the next week and Forbidden Door weekend. Let's close the tab.
Closing the tab.
All right, Mike Belcaster, as we close the tab and say goodbye to our second to last episode of Shot Nostalgia WWF 1998, what's going on your end? The debate, maybe the Fig Night. What's going on your end as far as things are in the Mike Belcaster world?
Absolutely. It smells like the oddities just came out for the first part of the lights. It's so disorientating. But yeah, man, we got a great Fig Night. We're having the one and only Knick on to talk about big rubber guys, courtesy of the Major Pod. I don't even know the Major Pod Foundation, Major Pod Network, whatever they are. The Major Pods. They got big LJN inspired.
I love those. Those look awesome. Definitely, I'm going to get behind the demolition ones for sure.
I'm super pumped for the demolitions. Me and Tom had a good discussion about it. I wanted to see more current guys. He wants to see more fill-ins for his LJN collection. So make sure you tune in the Fig Night. I'm sure it'll be a very long-winded talk about big rubber guys, but I'm here for it. We got some bendy talk too coming up, so it's always a pleasure to talk food with the one and only Knick. But yeah, man, we've been rocking and rolling. We just did awesome. If you check out my photos all over my Instagram, you see my CM Punk blood and guts with the MJF, the dog collar match. Lots of good shit going on. I've been deep diving in the picture game a little bit more, trying to get some cool stuff. So stay tuned for all that. The debate fell apart last week. Don't know what happened. Our guest canceled. Everything got all crazy. So we ended up not doing it. Yeah. So no debate drop this week. Hopefully we'll get a fill in before this airs. But don't know. But yeah, man, Tavern's running wild as always. Fig Night's running wild as always. As you can see, I'm working on the collection more. We're building more shit up here, having a good time with it, and that's what life's all about, right?
100%. And quickly, I know you guys have probably discussed it on Fig Night, so I don't want to bury the lead here. But thoughts on grapplers and gimmicks and the kind of the controversy going on with like Hastel Toys and Cardona breaking the foot off.
Is this who we're talking about? We're talking about Little Mitch.
You guys have extensive thoughts on that, or is that just kind of par for the course with new figures?
They look cheap. I'm not judging. It's hard to start a toy line. Obviously, you got to work on a lot of details. And Mitch was shit faced and on Instagram this week. Like,
Oh, I didn't see that. That
he was like, these are good, and he was opening up a bunch of them and showing how strong and durable they are. And good
Oh,
kudos.
wow.
You know, I'm here for it. I want more toys. I want to see more toy lines succeed. It's a big playground, but that video with Cardona was the funniest shit I think I've seen in a while. Like him doing this, like trying not to break the smile and like, oh, it's fucked. Like he did his best to cover damage control. But they do look pretty shitty. I'm not gonna lie. Ahmed Johnson looks gray. What do they call the Godfather? The smoke train. Like, get the fuck out of here. Sorry, Mitch. I love you, man.
Yeah, again, I don't know. I'm not in that circle, but I figured you'd be the guy to ask because you are, de facto figure, on Fig Night. You guys are our figure source, and that's how I get my news, dude. I have a figure collection, but I'm not a completist at all. I buy the figures I like. Only thing I collect strictly is Ultimate Warrior figures. If you like any figure that Ultimate Warrior ever had, and I ever see an Ultimate Warrior figure, I have to own it, which is I'm so bummed the Nitro stage didn't come out because I wanted the Warrior in jeans. I did.
Who didn't? Yeah, no,
I guess I can make it myself though. You know what I mean? Because like with the way figures come apart, I can make Warrior in jeans myself.
There's so many good things. If you find that Walmart exclusive Kenny Omega Supreme figure in the big box, man, you could just take that apart and throw a duster on it and slap a Warrior head on it. You got yourself the Ultimate Warrior in some badass ripped jeans that only Kenny Omega could rock so proudly. But kudos to your you just picked up that awesome Ultimate Warrior Superstars figure.
I did. That's a Walmart exclusive, right? That's how
that Superstars line. I'm surprised they don't sell them in Target because it's awesome. It's one of my favorite lines, and it's not LJN's, it's not Hasbro's. It's kind of its own thing. It's got a little bit of a Remco vibe, but
I was about to say that it reminds me of the Remco figures.
It reminds me more of like He-Man toys than anything, but
100%. I can see that.
Well,
I honestly love those figures. Not a
and
He-Man
they're fucking
guy,
Remco figures, you know.
Yeah.
So like you can't really go wrong.
The AWA ones, those are the Remcos, right?
Yeah, and so awesome, man. I mean, there was like technically the first like mass-produced toy line, so it's historical. But I love the Superstars line. Best soft goods, best fucking character selection. I just got the Macho Man and the Earthquake and a bunch of the other guys. I gotta open those on Fig Night. I got some cool shit coming up for Fig Night, so just stay tuned to the tavern, guys. You know the drill. I'm
hell yeah, guys. And we right now I have the luxury of being able to get my figure resource right here. Talk to Mike Belcaster about it. But you guys check it out. They drop the news. They're ahead of things, and there's connections there with the people that are making decisions in the figure world, and
we're all over the place.
It's your one source. I mean, if you want to have a good time and talk about wrestling figures, you have a passion for it, listen to Fig Night every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Check it out on the Turnbuckle Tavern. And you guys also too, I appreciate by the time this drops, Colton and I just dropped our Impact show. We did a transition from Ring of Honor to Impact because, full disclosure, a lot of requests have happened. Like they want us to cover Impact. And I'll be honest with you, I've had a good time covering Ring of Honor, mostly because I'm working with Colton. I think it's such a great time. But the Ring of Honor product has not really bore as much fruit as I thought it would because it's just treated as an extension of AEW Dark. And I don't think they're progressing the stories the same way, where it warrants us to spend valuable time talking about wrestling for 2 hours. And I think it's better suited because Impact, I've been watching weekly. Colton's been watching weekly. It's not like we're just going to jump in for the first time.
Yeah.
To hit an anniversary. They're about to go to Slammiversary, and there's big things happening in Impact, quality stuff. Alex Shelley's the world champion. Chris Sabin's the world champion. So join us every Thursday, about 10:35 p.m. live. Oh, yeah. Brace for Impact is the name of the show. We're going to be talking about all things Impact Wrestling. And even fun thing here, audio drop on Friday morning. So you guys will get your Impact fix on Friday morning. We will be the Impact flagship for the tavern. And I take some great pride in that because Impact, I will defend them all day. I know that Tom was ripping on them on the wrap-up show the other day, but I think if you watch Impact, dude, like
some of the best stuff going out there. Yeah.
Like Chad and I were just talking about it the other day in Wrestling Tonight. There's peaks and valleys of AEW and WWE. Like the highs are much higher in both companies, but as far as consistency goes, they are just putting out, to me, the most consistent product across all different promotions, and that's high praise for where Impact was.
No, 100%. And listen, I'm all about it. I'm glad to hear you guys transitioned out of it. I thought it was a typo in the group chat when you were like, "Oh, it might interfere with Impact." That's awesome, man. Impact deserves a little bit more love than it gets, and I think that it has been very consistent, strong storytelling there, great in-ring work, and always done very well. great group of people working over there. I know they just had Raven in a little while ago, and like
Lance Storm's working there as producer and doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes. And their we'll talk about it more on the show, but their roster is probably one of the best rosters in all of wrestling.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. It's good to see the love of Impact blooming here on the Turnbuckle Tavern. Congratulations on that.
100%. And you guys can go to the turnbuckletavern.com to make sure you guys can follow everything we're doing, just like a scheduling update. If you did not check out Brace for Impact with Colton and myself, go back and check it out. If you are an audio consumer only, be on Spotify, Apple, wherever you find podcasts, and we'll be there for you with all the Impact needs. And of course, make sure you guys are going back and checking out the flagship episode of the AW Dynamite wrap-up show from Hawk and also from Chad. Sneed on vacation, so we're going to get Hawk in
well-deserved vacation for Sneed. Workhorses, those two bad Chads are.
They deserve the vacation, and Hawk, we're getting a long form. If you're listening to this now, live, you already heard it. But check it out. Make sure you guys are supporting them. We have stuff every single day of the week on Turnbuckle Tavern. And on my side, make sure you guys follow me at ACEFIELD Retro. We got July 8th, Space is the Place, Remarkable Wrestling. I got some other bookings coming up too for some other promotions, so stay tuned for that. Some big stuff on the horizon, and I appreciate the love and support, you guys. So we'll be around. This is not goodbye yet for Shot Nostalgia Season 3, but we're damn close. We're about the season finale eve, right before the episode 22, and then we move into. I want to show you guys the overlays for Season 4 so badly, but I won't. I'm going to wait for the reveal. They are so absolutely epic. But
I wasn't sure if you showed them on any of the previous ones.
The logo's
my
been
camera's
shown.
moving me. No, but yeah, no, I'm super, super excited for everybody to get the whole vibe that we're going with for it. And I loved when we were coming up with it and talking to Chad about it, how we both instantly were on the same page with exactly how we wanted it to look. No spoilers. Can't wait. Great fucking time. This has been awesome. I'm so happy. I'm back here at Shout of Nostalgia with you, man. I know it's been a hectic month, and I've had to miss a few episodes, but I love you for holding down the fort as always. And this is just every time I'm here, it fits like a fucking nice pair of shoes, man. I love it.
Absolutely, man. And understand, I mean, you've been a busy guy in Vegas and making some moves for the tavern. So
yeah,
all appreciate it. I appreciate mostly that everybody stuck with me doing the solo dolo shows, and guys, making sure you guys are keeping up with the content. I know it's not as good as the dynamic, and I feel like we're up to bigger and better things now for next season. I feel like the trio for 7 episodes is going to be absolutely epic, and Colton's going to be such a welcome addition. But for 2 weeks from now, believe it or not. We're already in July. I remember when we built the schedule, I was like, holy shit, it's so far away, but here we are, getting ready to say goodbye to WWF 1998.
Flying through, man. I'm loving it. And what a journey it's been. Can't wait for the fucking future, man.
So that being said, we got a whole bunch of guys in our ear.
You want fluff? Go eat them. Marshmallow.
I broke my back.
Pissed.
All right, Belcaster, lead us out, my friend.
Yes. Oh, guys, thank you all for tuning in. Again, tune in next week for the grand finale of WWF 1998. We appreciate all of you. And until supply and demand make their debut on our televisions, this is over, man. This is over, and I'm done with it.
The oddity smell, guys. See you guys later.